Good morning. How we all doing? I hope we all have some coffee. This daylight savings time thing sucks. It's for the birds. DST screw anyone else up like it screws me up. What's up, Roman? This DST thing just absolutely demolishes me. My vote for whoever puts an end or permanent daylight savings, I don't even care. Just pick one. It's like pitch black in the morning. It's so hard to get up. It's so hard to get my family going. My daughter's like, why are you waking me up? Like, what? Like, why are we driving to school with our headlights on? Like, what are we doing? She's like, it's just like nighttime. Like, what's going on? All right, Roman for president. Got a bunch to talk about today. As always, there's never a slow news day. But at first I was gonna chat. I'm very fortunate to live in Austin for a few reasons. It's a cool city. The energy here is cool, but there's tons of cybersecurity founders here in town. And not a lot of us actually even compete with each other. There's a few that definitely overlap a little. But we kind of have this like really good group of people that come together, help each other out and all this kind of stuff. So I hosted them here at my office yesterday. We got a bunch of tacos, had about, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 founders come to my office over tacos. And what we've been doing, we've been trying to make it a point to get together and actually solicit feedback from the group for each other's businesses, right? So we'll kind of put 1 or 2 people in the hot seat who are looking to go through something in particular and just kind of put it to the group and see what kind of comes out of it. And it's just been awesome. And also I feel like I should bring crayons to these meetings because I should sit at the kid table in the corner and color, because we've got people doing, tens of millions of dollars ARR. We've got people who have IPO'd. We've got people who have started and sold multiple companies, got acquired. So when you got a guy kind of going through something and he's burning out and this, that, and the other thing, and talking about, M&A strategy or go-to-market strategy, or someone's just, one of the guys is just starting his new thing. Super cool to have a group of trusted people like that you can get that kind of feedback from. So I guess I say all that to just kind of emphasize the importance of in-person trusted gatherings. So wherever you're at, just make sure you're growing your community around where you're at. It's like completely invaluable. All right, where do we want to start on the news? This one's not a bad one to start with. Big city like that makes it easy. Austin's a small city. Is Austin even in the top 10? Morning. You have a question. Yeah, Austin's not even in the top 10 in the States. So I wouldn't necessarily say I live in a big city. I do live in a city. Tech hub for sure. That helps. But and Roman, you've heard my spiel on this before, especially like if you're at a phase in life where you're trying to be a little bit more career oriented and trying to build what you're working on. I think cities are the place to do it for sure. Any city. There are definitely, I would stack rank some cities, but just being in a city and not in the burbs. Scott Galloway has a saying for younger people or people earlier in their career. He has this phrase that I like. He says, "Go stand next to the biggest pile of money that you can," and it'll happen. Morning, Tyler. Austin Small. Is it a waste of time to learn binary exploitation, or should I focus on web more? What do you mean focus on web more? Learn binary exploitation. Say more. I mean, nothing you learn is a waste of time. What are you trying to do? And by web, do you mean web security and like web hacking? AppSec? So we talked a little bit about this last week, but I didn't see this research report come out at Checkpoint that's talking about they're seeing that Iran is scanning the internet for IP cameras to aid in missile strikes across a lot of places that they've been firing missiles. So this is like a huge like internet scanning component of kinetic warfare going on right now. Significant missile activity. We additionally observed camera targeting activity focused on specific areas in Lebanon. Ongoing. We intensified targeting of IP cameras from 2 manufacturers. So it's kind of interesting to find the actual evidence of the scanning for these vulnerabilities in these Hikvision and Dahua. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Camera products. So the attack infrastructure combines specific commercial VPN exit nodes, Mulvad, Proton, Surfshark, and Nord, and virtual private servers. I mean, I just find this stuff endlessly fascinating as we watch all of the crazy war stuff unfold on camera and social media and everything, to kind of pair that in your head with data of what's going on that they're scanning to aid in that stuff is just, it's kind of an intense look behind the curtain, in my opinion, right? The spikes in activity are closely aligned with the geopolitical events around the same time. I wish this had a y-axis here, right? Like, what scale are we talking about? Donuts. Guess that really depends on what you want to spend your time doing in your life. I don't think either of those would be a waste of time. It's definitely harder to get a career in like the exploit development, binary exploitation stuff. You're probably looking at pretty specific targeted people that would hire you for probably more like reverse engineering type activity is what I'm assuming. Web hacking is obviously a much more common skill in like the career path land, though AppSec is definitely one of the areas ripest for disruption with AI right now. I'll say that too. Yeah. Hey, by the way, don't put your cameras on the internet. How about that? And keep them up to date. I mean, this is just falling on deaf ears, right? Because it's like, if you have any of these public cameras that they're hacking into, there's no way they're even ever going to do any of this stuff. So, but yeah, obviously, don't do any of that stuff. Which direction should we go? Should we stay in war land, politics land? I can stay in politics land. I've got a few AI stories. We've got a few more like Russia, China-y things. What? This is garbage. I realized I was paying. Did you guys ever use Replit as a AI coding thing? I got an email with like a bill. I just realized I've been paying for it for a while. You did for like 5 minutes. Yeah. Well, they milked me for a $20 a month thing that I just fell under my radar on my company card for a while. I was like, I gotta get rid of that. What up, Cybersec Media YouTube account? Is that Mr. Bill? Or is that any of your illustrious business partners? It's Mr. Bill. Wasn't into it. Replit was magic like when it first came out because nothing else was really doing that. And you could use it on mobile. So you could like, the reason I bit was I was sitting at a bar with some friends and they like pulled it up on their phone and like shit out a web app like while sitting at the bar. The eternity that is YouTube upload. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, Replit was pretty cool for a minute, and then a lot of the stuff out of the box kind of lapped it, right? All right. Here's one. Morning, Muhammad. So we finally got, I clocked this right away. I was like, oh man, do I have to make a video about this? This is so stupid. So the White House put out their cyber strategy that I guess people had been anticipating. I wasn't anticipating it. CIS is gutted. I don't know who the experts over here are anymore anyway. But they put out some stuff. I think this sums it up, right? More than half of the 5 pages of strategy is preamble. 2 of the 7 pages are title and ending. So there's just like there's nothing in this fucking thing at all. We could pull it up. Cyber strategy, it's 7 pages. This is one of them. This is nothing, right? This doesn't say anything. Just this is more of the same, right? Our adversaries target our families, neighbors, whatever. Trump's actions send a clear message. We will act to defend our interests in cyberspace. But like, where's the cyber strategy part of this document? It just doesn't exist, right? We will act swiftly. Like this whole doc could just be rolled down to like, we're going to do more betterer cyber, please. We would like to shape adversary behavior. Know how here. Promote common sense regulation. Modernize and secure the federal government networks, even though we gutted, CISA and everything. Secure critical infrastructure. Again, that was a major part of CISA's remit. Sustain superiority in critical emerging technologies, AI specifically, build talent and capacity, and conclusion. That's it. We're done. That's the whole national strategy, and here's your end page. GPT ad doc. Yeah. The M dashes everywhere. Nothing in here, man. Just like cyber is scary. Our enemies do cyber things. We're going to do more betterer cyber. This just sucks, right? Each of the 6 pillars offers some prescription. Shaping adversary behavior calls for the U.S. government offensive and defensive capabilities in cyberspace, as well as incentivizing the private sector to disrupt adversary networks. They have talked about this, right? Like the letters of marque type stuff. You really wanted to be surprised. Every once in a while, you hope that there's still some adults in the room kind of actually running things. You know what I mean? Like, I convince myself every once in a while that there's like some career civil servants that are still fighting the good fight behind the scenes, but just ain't it, right? Counter the spread of surveillance, state, and authoritarian technologies that monitor and repress citizens. I think this is rich, considering what's going on right now with ICE, DHS, Flock cameras, Palantir, Anduril, all that kind of crap. Yeah, this administration has fostered surveillance and repression against U.S. citizens. So what do they mean? We can do this, but other countries can't? China bad? China bad for doing this. U.S. good for doing this. Like, what does any of this mean? The shortest pillar, none of the pillars were very long, but the shortest one was common sense regulation. Decries rules that are only costly checklists. Oh, man. Costly checklists is kind of like a really, really, honestly, I've spent my career in this industry. Costly checklist is a really good way to summarize what cybersecurity just is in general. Okay. This is like saying the FAA is a costly checklist. Like, you know, I know that there's a checklist that the pilot has to do before he ever takes off a plane with 200 people in it, that he's responsible for their lives. They actually call them souls. I know there's a checklist, but we got to get these planes moving faster. So we're going to get rid of these costly checklists of the pilots going through. I once read something that about aviation that I think really applies to cybersecurity, that it said every item on a pilot's checklist is written in blood. Like every checklist thing that they have to go over, that the FAA requires them to go over, every item is written in blood. And it's like a really, really apt metaphor for the costly checklists that are cybersecurity checklists as well. If it's there, something bad has happened related to it. I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek. Obviously, there's some like compliance and regulatory bodies that are a bit heavy-handed in things, and it's really hard to do business in certain heavily regulated environments. But I've always said this. I've worked at social media companies and I've worked at some of the biggest banks in the world. I would complain about how hard it was to do something at the banks, and then I would say, oh, right. And then when I moved to the social media, I was like, wow, I can move so fast here. I was like, oh, if I break Reddit, everyone's paycheck's still clear tomorrow, right? Is like what I'd have to say to myself. To be like, oh yeah, I'm allowed to move fast here because my mistakes wouldn't mean that someone can't pay their rent tomorrow. Like, costly checklists. Man. Modernize and secure federal networks. Okay. This one and this one are just tied to CISA, in my opinion. These were both CISA remits that they are now what? What is CISA was like 2,000 employees is now 300 employees or something like that. So I don't understand this or this. How? How are we doing this? We will deny our adversaries initial access, and in the event of an incident, we must be able to recover quickly. How? This is a strategy, man. This sucks. This unified strategy determining a direction on offensive and defensive cyber operations couldn't be more timely. Like, what kind of ass quote is this? Couldn't be more timely. Cyber is important. I'm glad the president said the word cyber, because that's really all that happened. He just went up to a mic and was like, cyber, Do cyber better. Rightly recognizes harnessing America's unique mix of private sector and public sector capacity. I don't know. Someone let me know if my bias is blinding me to see something here. Redirecting resources from paperwork to AI-powered security capabilities is the only way to keep pace. The head of government affairs at Elastic. This strategy appears to recognize that fundamental truth. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see how this strategy recognizes anything. What little substance does exist in this pamphlet of mishmash of vague platitudes and a long catalog of we will statements that may or may not match the administration's current behavior and mercifully an apparent extension of some Biden-era policies. This is giving that speech in Billy Madison where the guy goes, nowhere in your rambling, incoherent response was anything that resembled a correct answer. We are all now dumber for having listened to it, and may God have mercy on your soul. Did I get that like almost word for word? Hold on. Billy Madison. I need to see how close I got to actually quoting that whole Billy Madison thing right off the bit. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. I love that. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? I'm not too old. You guys have seen Billy Madison, please. That's what this is giving, though. Who said this? They're my hero of this. Benny Thompson, House Homeland Security Committee. What little substance does exist in this pamphlet is a mishmash of vague platitudes, a long catalog of we will statements that may or may not match the administration's current behavior, and mercifully, an apparent extension of some Biden-era policies. Completely lacking is even the most basic blueprint for how the administration will go about achieving any of its cybersecurity goals. An objective possibly hamstrung by the hemorrhage in cyber talent across all federal agencies since Trump took office. This paragraph just made me so happy. Oh God. Okay. This paragraph just said it so much better than I just did, right? I mean, I think this summed up my attitude towards the whole thing as well, right? It's just like, hey, you fucking gutted CISA, who had the remit for at least 2 of your 6 pillars, was squarely their remit. And then everything else had no details. I think I gotta tweet this, don't I? This is really, really funny. Hold on. I never open X live on camera anymore until I know what's actually going on the screen. I said, oh my God. Wait, okay, I can pull this up. Nothing bad is on screen now. I was like, oh, this review of Trump's new cyber policy strategy. And then I have to include a picture of I gotta put a picture of James Downey. Right. Jacob? Good to see you, dude. Yeah, come on. BioShadow, man. There's a name I haven't heard in a long time. How the hell are you, homie? For those you don't know, BioShadow and chat and I worked together when we were young pups. Fucking 20 years ago. How long ago? 16 years ago? And then we lived in Houston together 14 years ago. Right? Holy shit. Life moves fast. I gotta pull this quote up. You've been lurking? Well, thanks for speaking up. You left what, 10 years ago? Houston? Oh, so you didn't stay in Houston much after I did, huh? Because I've been in Austin like 11 years now. Guys, it's going to be a multiple cold brew kind of day. What are you doing nowadays? Are you still hacking computers? I'm putting that on LinkedIn too. I love Austin. I'm obsessed with Austin. Obsessed with Austin. I'm an Austin cult member for sure. LinkedIn chat. So I like that why won't LinkedIn let me pick? LinkedIn is just worse in so many ways. What is WebP? And why are so many images WebP images? It's so annoying. Because then, like, everywhere you download a bunch of pictures and they're a WebP picture, and then nowhere lets you upload a WebP picture. It's so frustrating that like has turned into a thing. Ba-da-ba. You need to go to Austin. Yeah. You manage smart people doing their best to keep the government network safer. Ooh. Someone let you be a manager? I'm just messing with you. I haven't seen you in like 12 years. I just like that I post stuff on LinkedIn that like everyone else is always like talking about their job title and stuff, and I kind of just troll on LinkedIn a little bit more than most people do. What up, Jamie? I need a custom hat. Which one of my catchphrases the hat should have? Jamie, I don't think you were in here the other day. I pulled up the Wayback Machine of Liquid Matrix and my old blog and like was reading a bunch of the blogs that I wrote for you, basically, like way back when. And I had to explain to the crowd here why we used to hate the word cyber. Like we've given in. We've given in. We all call it cybersecurity now. Like we just have to. It's just what everyone calls it now. But like that we used to have cyber douchery, right? Like cyber douchery was like a tag that we would put on blogs and talk about. It was like a section of our podcast was all about making fun of the cybers, basically. And we had stickers, cyber douchery stickers, and we had like all sorts of stuff. And I had to explain that to people here because it's just what we call this shit now. It sucks. I wish it could go back into its hole. That's the one. That's what you thought. I need a cyber douchery hat. I used to have an ass hat too, like the application security specialist, certified application security specialist, the ass cert. I used to have an ass hat. That was good. Application security specialist. That was on my blog. I can find that. Hold on. Let's find it again. Since Jamie's here, I got to pull it up because he'll get a big kick out of it. I don't know. We can go back further than that if we want. Oh, here we go. So here's my old blog, all right? 2011. It goes back to like 09, but I had the ass cert right on my blog. It was like front and center, certified application security specialist. Ass. It was good. Jamie, you'll like this. Oh yeah, I started a security meetup in 2009 on Long Island. Hold on. I have... Oh, I can't do that. Hold on. Wayback Machine. I got to go way backer. Your LSD hat. I still, yeah, I wore that hat with Dave's I wore that hat with Dave's little skull on it forever. What up, Kilobyte? Here you go, Jamie. Look at this. This is before I met you. Oh, no, it's probably right after I met you. But I wrote this blog called A Lot of Information Security Career Advice, and I linked James Arlen, who's in chat right now, everybody. Since we're all old fucks. Here you go. Yeah, crazy. The internet is forever. And then Bill Pennington, BioShadow. You will recognize that name on here. Brought us to Houston. I literally was on a boat with Marcus Carey like 3 weeks ago. Mubix just wrote me on LinkedIn last week. Like we still talk to all these people. I was on Paul's podcast like a few months ago. Super funny, man. Anyway, I know I pulled that up on stream last week, but we got some people in here that are mentioned. You pulled materials from that for your submission to figured I could use that. I've been doing this for 30 years update. Yeah. Black Hat to Black Suit was the name of that talk. And he was basically like how to turn hacking skills into a career. It was a great talk. To date everybody on it, I did not watch that on the internet. Someone handed me a DVD of that talk, Jamie. Kilobyte, counting as 2 of my viewers. Thanks for doing your best to boost my my algorithm here, Kilobyte. My puny chat algorithm here. I will say I've been doing a bad job promoting that I live stream. I just kind of tweet it, and maybe I throw it on Instagram every once in a while. But a bunch of the guys that came in to my office yesterday, a bunch of security founders here in Austin that I hang out with all the time. I was like, oh, I'm live streaming, twice a week. And they were like, what? You do? They're like, we could come hang out. DVD tables at cons. No, so this was my professor at college handed me the DVD. I didn't even go to the con. I was poor. 160 pounds heavier in that video. Yeah, we were all a bit heavier for a while there. All right, so that's Cyberdouchery. That's Cyberdouchery article. This is, Jamie, if we were still podcasting, this would have been the entire Cyberdouchery section. You would have passed this off to me as the token American and said, you would have like put on your Terrence and Phillip voices and laughed at me and been like, okay, Cyberdouchery, here's the American that we get to point and laugh at. For those of you who don't know, we did a podcast for a long time and I was the only American. Everyone else was Canadian. So, or if Bill is still in chat, he would say that he was another American that worked for Liquid Matrix, but not on the podcast. I got my lickings on the podcast. All right. What other, not all the reviews. Yeah. So this was the review. This is great. The order directs, executive order signed Friday coincides with the release of the strategy, but there's little overlap. The strategy makes one mention of cybercrime. The order directs the Attorney General to prioritize prosecution of cybercrime and fraud. Orders agencies to review tools that they could use to counter international cybercriminal organizations and give DHS marching orders to improve training. Unleashing every available tool to stop foreign-backed criminal networks that exploit vulnerable Americans through cyber-enabled fraud, the fact sheet says. Build talent and capability because the U.S. doesn't have that. Yeah. What's up, Brandon? Good to see you. Who else popped in? Oh, Kilobyte just dropping the emojis. Yeah. Yeah, the record kind of put some stuff out here too about this. This quote is so good. What's up, Jay? I don't think there's much else to really talk about with this. It's really an unfortunate nothing burger. Yeah. Emoji spam those shiny Dragapults. New Florida HB 945 backed by Celebrate. What are you talking about, Brandon? Concepts of a cyber plan. Brandon, what are you talking about? What is this? I don't know what this is yet, but I have no confidence in Florida to get this right either. OpenAI Codex copied Claude with the AppSec stuff. Yeah. We got that lined up, Roman. We'll talk about that. As long as I keep benefiting personally from the arms race between OpenAI and Anthropic, I'm okay with it. They can keep pushing each other faster. FBI, NSA, CIA, DHS, and other alphabet orgs don't do it. Their own anti-terror org in Florida to spy on people? Oh, man. Not fun, BioShadow. Proposal to create a counterintelligence unit receives bipartisan pushback. We can agree that this sucks. He'll introduce an amendment to address First Amendment concerns. Okay. This guy looks like he's about to poop himself in the hallway somewhere. All right. What is this? Create a statewide counterintelligence and counterterrorism unit within Florida. COINTELPRO. The primary goal of the unit would be to detect, identify, neutralize, and exploit adversary intelligence entities, international and domestic terrorists, insider threats, corporate threats, and other foreign adversaries. He's pointing to New York, saying that New York dedicated counterterrorism unit with 1,000 officers and Federal Intelligence Service failed to prevent the 9/11 attacks. What? History shows us that when we depend on the federal government, Florida loses. Okay. However, that approach in New York meant increased surveillance that drew criticism for violating civil liberties. What's the actual bill saying, though? The vagueness in the bill's language. I've seen sufficient abuses of power among at least one unelected cabinet member to give me grave concerns about the abuse of a bill like this to go into statute. He's referencing Florida Attorney General, whom said abused his power in office. How? I don't know. I'm not familiar with this story. Let's go read it. Urging anti-abortion groups to protest the Republican who accused him of crimes in the Hope Florida saga. Reached out to faith groups falsely alleging this representative was proposing cutting funding for the chain of anti-abortion clinics. The spokesperson asked the groups to protest and carry signs. The message highlighted how Planned Parenthood... All right, we're getting off the rails. I don't understand. Apparently, this attorney general might have done some stuff. See ya. Have fun being an adult. Thanks for hanging out. It would cost $2 billion to start, with reoccurring costs of $1.5 million annually. That's incredibly small if you think about it. What? That's not a lot of people. You can't hire a whole lot of people for that much money. The initial criminal predicate has to begin. Business Reform has a good video on it. We can watch the video if we want. I'm just trying to figure out what the surveillance, like, what are they proposing? You know what I mean? Let's see. How long is this video? It's kind of long. Why is my audio not working?
Backed by a scandal-ridden.
Hello, audio. Huh. Sorry, excuse me. My speakers aren't working. I'll watch the video. We can react to it if we want, but am I muted? You hear it? You guys can hear that? I can't hear this right now.
I am Dr. John Padfield, an engineer turned Indiana State Representative.
What? You can hear it and I can't? What's going on with my speakers? Hold on. I think someone was kicking around behind my desk. Maybe a cord came loose. Hold on. No. Everything is plugged in, but nothing is lighting up. How many hackers does it take? There we go. How many hackers does it take to turn on some speakers? There we go. Got it. Somehow they went off. All right. We want to listen to this? I'm down.
Scandal-ridden Israeli-based digital intelligence company. What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly
In
go
this
wrong?
video,
Right.
I'm going to answer that question, show you the receipts, and suggest some things that you can do about it.
My dude, you seem great. We're going to speed this up.
I am Dr. John Padfield, an engineer turned Indiana State Representative turned business professor. Danny Alvarez is a second-term Republican state representative from Florida's 69th district, which includes the cities of Brandon and Bloomingdale. Campaign finance records show he has received thousands of dollars in donations from the GEO Group. For those of you not familiar with the GEO Group, they are a for-profit private prison company started in 1984 that went public in 1994.
I watched a whole thing about this group. This is the group that's running the new detention camps in Florida, right? This is Alligator Alcatraz or whatever they're calling it. I just watched the whole thing about this group last night, and it's so messed up. They're like, they have shit. They're a publicly traded company, and on their shareholder meetings, they talk about how much money they receive. Like, what is it per bed? They call it bed rates, basically like occupancy rates that they would like to continue to see going up. So like their incentives are like completely tied to like ICE throwing more people into their jails because they get contracts per person that they detain. They get like an amount like in the contract. Yeah.
This company achieved record profits while the U.S. prison population was increasing at an average rate of 17%
Incentives
per year for 20
are
consecutive years.
misaligned
In 2015,
here.
the Washington Post ran a story on how for-profit prisons became the biggest lobbying group no one is talking about. Quote, several industries have become notorious for the millions they spend on influencing legislation and getting friendly candidates into office. Big oil, big pharma, and the gun lobby among them. But one has managed to quickly build influence with comparatively little scrutiny: private prisons. GEO, now known as the GEO Group, was already one of the 2 largest private prisons in the United States as of 2015, and as an industry, private prisons had already spent $10 million in political donations and $25 million on lobbying as of the end of 2014. What type of laws were private prisons lobbying for? Public safety, of course. Several reputable studies, linked in the description, have documented how the GEO Group and other private prisons bankroll organizations like the American Legislative Exchange Council, who were pushing for longer prison sentences and 3 strikes.
Yeah, you got to imagine their incentives are completely misaligned, right? So like private prisons are one thing that we can like debate just like ethically existing in any way. But then that they can lobby, right? That they're allowed to then spend money lobbying for laws that would increase prison population. The incentives are really, really misaligned here. I know, hey guys, sorry, cybersecurity stream. I understand. We're getting to it because the thing that they're talking about here is like surveillance state shit going on in Florida. So one of the main reasons, just to like sum it up, that like cybersecurity and privacy advocates are very against a lot of the surveillance state things is because the whole like if you had like I don't have anything to hide crowd is just incorrect, right? If they watch everything that you do, say everything, at any point they can decide whatever it is that you're doing is against the law, is kind of like what's going on, right? There's a ton of things that are like illegal or whatever that aren't highly enforced. But if you're collecting all data on all people, you can just start being like, oh, we're going to like detain you because I don't know, you like whatever the hell it is, right? Like recreational drug. Oh, your medical marijuana card lapsed and you purchased marijuana. Oh, whatever the hell it is, right? Like there's tons of examples of this throughout history that we can point to. This is why the Fourth Amendment exists, right? Like that they can't just like search anything they want at all times, because then they can just be like, you come with us.
Laws. These types of laws are at least partially responsible for the United States having an incarceration rate nearly 6 times higher than our allies, including the Five Eyes nations of the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. I am a business professor and I believe in capitalism, but I do not like the business model of private prisons because their financial incentives make them a petri dish for corruption.
Yeah, this is exactly what I just said.
In 2009, 2 Pennsylvania judges were convicted in what became known as the Kids for Cash program. These judges were convicted of taking $2.6 million in kickbacks for sentencing children as young as 8 years old to 2 for-profit juvenile detention centers. Children.
Bury them under the prison. Are you serious? I never heard of that. So the judges were taking kickbacks from the people who were running the prisons for sending juveniles into jail. This is like ruin these kids' lives type stuff, right? Like it's really hard to come back from that kind of record.
Is 8 years old to 2 for-profit juvenile detention centers.
Bury the judges
Children,
under the
most of whom were
prison.
first
I'm
offenders,
sorry.
were given 1 to 2 minute hearings without a lawyer before being sentenced to years in juvenile detention for minor offenses. In the aftermath of this scandal, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned over 4,000 juvenile convictions. In case you're wondering what happened to the judges, both of them received lengthy prison sentences, but one of them had his sentence commuted in the final days of the Biden administration. Why did I call Representative Alvarez's donor, the GEO Group, a scandal-ridden private prison company? In the past 14 months, they have lost court cases in both the 9th District Court of Appeals and the United States Supreme Court related to unjust enrichment from a forced labor program they created that paid detainees $1 per day. Last year, the GEO Group got in trouble with the National Labor Relations Board after retaliating against detained immigrants by putting them in solitary confinement for signing a petition about working conditions.
Modern day slavery, right? Like $1 a day labor camps.
For using toxic cleaning chemicals and for inhumane conditions at an ice processing center. Before anyone dismisses these lawsuits as politically motivated propaganda, let's examine what an official Department of Justice investigation into one of the GEO Group's facilities found in 2012. According to the DOJ investigation, the GEO Group's youth correctional facility in Mississippi had systemic, egregious, and dangerous practices exacerbated by lack of accountability and controls, including, quote, deliberate indifference to staff sexual misconduct and inappropriate behavior with youth, excessive use of force by staff on youth, and the deliberate indifference to the medical needs of youth. As I said earlier, the financial incentives of the private prison makes them a petri dish for corruption. Simply put, private prisons make more money when more people are incarcerated in private prisons.
Yeah, so we're going through all this. The reason I'm not like completely fast forwarding this, it is important context if we're going to start talking about this is the group that is funding the bill to do more surveillance, right? Like this is really, really important to like have this context in your head talking about what this bill is. Thank you for Brandon shouts on bringing this up.
Prisons. According to the latest Department of Justice figures, over 13% of prisoners in Florida are held in private prisons, which is nearly double the national average. Now let's turn our attention to the bill Representative Alvarez introduced in the Florida House less than 3 weeks after receiving his second campaign donation from the GEO Group. Florida House Bill 945 was filed on December 30th, 2025, and as of the first week of March 2026, it has already been passed by 3 House committees or sub.
So this is the bill. So an act relating to the statewide counterintelligence counterterrorism unit. Requiring the department to establish a statewide unit housed in specified location, requiring that the unit be composed of specified number of teams. Okay, so this is like budgetary, like let's throw a bunch of stuff at state run in Florida, counterintelligence, counterterrorism, which I'm guessing the 1-2 punch that we're about to see comes with lots of fun surveillance crap.
Subcommittees. Of all the representatives who have voted on this bill in committee, 48 have voted for it and only 9 have voted against it. That means nearly half the House has already voted on this bill in committee and 84% of that half voted to pass it. What exactly does this bill do? First, it establishes a dedicated counterintelligence and counter T-word unit. I really don't like having to talk in code, but the YouTube algorithm does not like certain words, and the word that rhymes with they're at risk is one of them. So I'm going to be saying the T-word a lot in this video. The mission of the counter T-word unit, which I will simply refer to as the CTU from now on, is to, quote, detect, identify, neutralize, and exploit adversary intelligence entities and international and domestic T-words to protect the state of Florida and the United States of America. Who could possibly oppose such a wholesome, noble, and patriotic-sounding piece of legislation? It's like eating apple pie on an American flag tablecloth. And Florida definitely needs its own CTU for detecting, identifying, and neutralizing international and domestic T-words, because there aren't any federal agencies responsible for doing that, other than the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Agency, and the Central Intelligence Agency, and I almost forgot the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has its own National Counter T-Word Center, and the Department of Justice National Security Division has its own Counter T-Word section, and the U.S. Department of Treasury has its own T-Word and Financial Intelligence section. But other than those, and about 30 other lesser-known federal offices, agencies, divisions, bureaus, and task force, nobody is trying to detect, identify, and neutralize international and domestic T-words. If Los Angeles can have its own CTU, so can Tallahassee.
Who made
Getting back to House Bill 940.
Who made the 24 joke? Wait, I'm scrolling up in chat. Someone made the 24 joke. That was you, Brandon. Okay, so you watched this
I
video.
at least have some idea what international and domestic T words are. While their exact definition seems to depend on which party controls the White House, I have heard those terms used often enough to know they generally describe people who carry out, or at least plan, politically motivated acts of violence. But what is an adversary intelligence entity? It sounds like an organization Boris and Natasha might have worked for when they weren't chasing the moose and the flying squirrel. Or maybe the chaos organization Maxwell Smart and Agent 99 were always investigating. Thankfully, we don't have to guess what an adversary intelligence entity is because House Bill 945 defines it for us. Sort of. Quote, the term adversary intelligence entity includes, but is not limited to, any government, non-governmental organization, company, business, corporation, etc., or person whose demonstrated actions, views, or opinions are a threat or are inimical to the interest of the state. The word inimical simply means harmful. Let me emphasize that last point. Under House Bill 945, a person who holds views or opinions deemed a threat or harmful to the interest of the state will be labeled as an adversary intelligence entity, or
Okay.
or in the more common vernacular, an enemy of the state.
Okay. So here we go. So the phrase that I'm going to say this basically every time I go on video at this point. The phrase that I'm seeing more and more right now that is absolutely terrifying me in conjunction with everything else that we're seeing in terms of like the expansion of the surveillance state is sentiment analysis. Okay. So they're saying this, like that they want to be able to, like, okay, you cross the border right now. They want to be able to look up all your social media posts to do sentiment analysis and then literally decide whether or not to let you into the country, right? Sentiment analysis. This is something that's like, I've seen this phrase come up in the stuff with ICE deploying basically freaking stingrays and intercepting like people's location, people's text messages, people's everything, right? And sentiment analysis. So pair that with what we're watching now, right? Which is what he just said. We're gonna go back a little bit. It's super important. This is like the critical point of this whole thing, right? So adversary intelligence entity includes, but is not limited to, any national, foreign, multinational, friendly, competitor, opponent, adversary, or recognized enemy, government, non-government organization, company, business, corporation, or whatever, or person who demonstrated actions, views, or opinions that are a threat or are against the interests of the state. Who is to determine this, right? And is what I'm doing right now demonstrating views that are against the interests of the state? You know what I mean? Like I'm sure someone who voted for and wrote this bill would probably be sitting in chat right now going, well, this guy is a threat, right? The point being, they can define whatever this is, and this bill is trying to give them power to watch.
Views or opinions are a threat or are inimical to the interest of the state.
Here you
the
go.
word inimical simply means harmful. Let me emphasize that last point. Under House Bill 945, a person who holds views or opinions deemed a threat or harmful to the interest of the state will be labeled as an adversary intelligence entity, or in the more common vernacular, an enemy of the state. Remember, if you aren't thinking anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. Enemies of the state sounds like a list you probably don't want to be on. So what exactly are the interests of the state so you can get your mind right and not hold the wrong views or opinions? Unfortunately, the bill...
Right? Like, what in the Fahrenheit 451, right? Like, did you hear that last sentence he said? Let me slow it down. Let me let him say this on his normal speed.
Don't want to be on. So what exactly are the interests of the state so you can get your mind right and not hold the wrong views or opinions?
Oh, chat, we're taking crazy pills. Okay, so like, what are the views of the state so that you can get your mind right and not hold opinions that are antithetical to the interests of the state?
Unfortunately, the bill doesn't list the interest of the state, and I suspect that is because they are poorly defined, controversial, and subject to change without notice. Just don't hold any views or opinions that are harmful to those interests, and you'll be fine. You may be wondering how the state would even know if you hold...
I mean, like, right. Hey, Gracie, good. How are you doing?
Views or opinions that are deemed a threat to the state, and House Bill 945 does answer that question. The CTU shall identify threats by analyzing patterns of life. What does that mean? Pattern of life data is all the data already being collected on you by data brokers, big tech, and licensed...
Wait. The unit shall identify threats by analyzing patterns of life.
Identify threats by analyzing patterns of life. What does that mean? Pattern of life data...
Where you go, what you watch or read, what you buy, what you post online, who you call and text, who you meet in person, hobbies and interests, your values and beliefs. We have evidence of literally these kinds of profiles being built right now, specifically by ICE right now is kind of the hot topic, but you got to imagine other 3 letters are doing similar. And BioShadow, I agree. This is a very solid video.
That is all the data already being collected on you by data brokers, big tech, and license plate reader companies. It includes data about where you go, what you watch or read, what you buy, what you post online, who you call or text, who you meet in person, what hobbies and interests you have, and what values and beliefs you hold.
Yeah.
I recently made a video called Surveillance Bingo that I will link at the end of this video. It describes over a dozen different types of surveillance technology, from public bathroom microphones disguised
We've
as
talked about a lot of
for
this.
keywords, to smart streetlights with microphones and cameras built into them, to
We've
facial
talked a
recognition
lot
video doorbells,
about
to signal trace that tie
Ring
your
and
phone,
Flock
laptop,
and
smartwatch,
stuff.
Bluetooth headphones to your vehicle license plate, so you can be detected if you ride in somebody else's vehicle. If you want to learn how to start reclaiming your digital and financial privacy, I encourage you to visit escapethetechnocracy.com/reform to see a selection of great courses, books, newsletter, and consulting services to help you on your privacy journey. I met the co-founders of this organization when I was speaking at a privacy conference in Mexico City last month. We had 2 long and enjoyable conversations where we discussed different aspects of and approaches to privacy. I have turned down numerous sponsorships and affiliate programs in the past, but I know the people behind Escape the Technocracy, and I believe in them and their products. Use my affiliate link to save 10% off anything you purchase.
I usually
and you will not only
skip-
get great products, but you will help support this channel.
I usually skip, if I'm like reacting to a video, I usually skip their sponsor section. I thought that one was important to keep playing. This guy just deserves, I don't know if you guys saw, I subscribed, I put my alerts on. I've never seen this. Brandon, thank you so much. This is one of my new must-watch channels. This is fantastic.
What else will Florida CTU do if House Bill 945 becomes law? Quote, the unit shall identify threats by analyzing patterns of life, gathering actionable intelligence, and formulating effective plans of action, and by executing arrest, or by revealing its intent to compel a response, using all counterintelligence and counter-keyword tradecraft necessary to protect the state from people who hold views or opinions deemed harmful to the state. Using all counter-keyword tradecraft. In the case of Jack Bauer's CTU, that tradecraft frequently involved the use of enhanced interrogation techniques, such as deprivation tactics, coercion, intimidation, and physical violence against suspects. Thankfully, Jack Bauer's CTU was just a fictional TV show, and no one involved in Florida law enforcement would ever use
Heavy on the /S here, right?
excessive force. If Florida law enforcement officers ever used excessive force or misused the warrantless mass surveillance networks they had been given access to, I am sure the legislature in the free state of Florida would immediately introduce legislation to crack down on law enforcement misconduct. Why was this legislation to literally create the Florida Thought Police introduced in the first place? A March 3rd article in the Florida Trib described the bill as a, quote, constitutional train wreck, and I agree with that assessment. I believe Florida House Bill 945 is an attempt to expand on an executive order signed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in December 2025. In that order, Governor DeSantis designated the Council on American Islamic Relations as a, quote, foreign T-word organization, and he alleges it has ties to Hamas. The Council on American Islamic Relations denies it has any ties to Hamas, and the U.S. government has not designated them as a foreign T-word organization. I want to make something perfectly clear. This video is not intended as pro or anti-Muslim any more than it is intended as pro or anti-Israel. I just have a serious constitutional problem with any state governor designating any group as a T-word organization. That term can carry lethal repercussions, and I don't want 50 different people deciding what organizations belong on that list. Neither do I want state-level paramilitary agencies authorized to conduct, quote, direct action missions going after people who have been labeled an enemy of the state for their views and opinions. It turns out I am not the only one who sees a constitutional problem with governors designating groups as T-word organizations. U.S. District Judge Mark Walker cited the First Amendment in his preliminary injunction preventing Governor DeSantis' executive order from taking effect, while the lawsuit filed by the Council on American Islamic Relations
we're getting to the
moves forward.
Celebrite
We have
part.
looked at the private prison company that is financially supporting the author of House Bill 945, and we have looked at what the bill does. Let's quickly wrap up this video by looking at the company that is lobbying to get this bill turned into law. According to the Florida Lobbyist Disclosure and Information Database, there are 6 registered lobbyists for House Bill 945. Common Cause Florida, Florida Rising, and the Florida State Conference of the NAACP branches are all opposed to House Bill 945.
There it
but a
is.
company called Cellebrite is registered to support it. Who is Cellebrite? They are a publicly traded Israeli-based digital intelligence company who make spyware and forensic extraction tools that have been used by authoritarian regimes to hack electronic devices of journalists, human rights activists, and
Yeah, if you guys don't know, Celebrite is if the border or like law enforcement get your phone and they plug it into something, it's Celebrite that's like trying to take a copy of your device, right? Like, and this is the Celebrite is the stuff that you're trying to protect yourself against if you turn your phone off. Celebrite, especially on iOS, the like after first reboot or what's there's an acronym. Your phone goes into a certain state on first power up before unlock. It's like before first unlock or something like that. I forget what it is. That makes it this stuff not work unless they have 0 days that they're burning in spyware against you. At which point you're a journalist or you're an activist or something like that they're targeting, and then you have a very different threat model.
environmental activist. There is also substantial evidence Celebrite tools were used by Kenyan authorities to search the phone of a pro-democracy activist who plans to run for president in 2027. According to an August 2023 article in TechCrunch, Celebrite asked cops not to divulge the use of their products to the courts when they are asked how they extracted data from a suspect's phone. I guess Celebrite is concerned about their company's privacy, and you wouldn't want a judge or jury to find out where the evidence came from. You certainly don't want to confuse a jury with trivial details about chain of custody of key evidence. Just trust me, bro. Celebrite has been awarded $16.8 million in contracts from the United States government and over $2.5 million from the state of California, and over $770,000 from Miami-Dade County in Florida. In other words, Celebrite is making tens of millions of dollars from American taxpayers taxpayers while simultaneously trying to keep the use of their technology secret. To make sure the money keeps flowing, Celebrate spends approximately $500,000 per year lobbying Congress, and that doesn't include what they spend lobbying in state legislatures across the country. With nearly half of the Florida House having already voted on this bill in committee and 84% of them voting for it, this bill is poised to be approved by the House within the next couple of weeks. Please subscribe to stay updated on this legislation. If you don't live in Florida, their legislature isn't going to listen to you, but they may listen to people that you know who live there. So please share this video, especially with anyone you know who lives in Florida. And wherever you live, contact your state senator and state representative and politely inform them that you don't want this type of constitutional train wreck passed in your state. Your state.
All right. Awesome, awesome video. Clap emojis in chat. Clap, clap, clap. Yeah. That's a good one. I'm gonna write about all. I was not following that one. The House Bill 945. This is from. Oh, that video was only 1 day ago. Okay. I don't feel as ill-informed. This is news. That's a really good topic to cover that wasn't even on my radar. Appreciate it mucho. Okay, let's stay. We've still got a few more politicky things that we can talk about before we get off of that. The cybers. Family in Florida had no idea what was happening. Yeah. What up, McMedden? Good to see you. All right. What do we have? I guess somewhat related. All right. We can slowly ease our way off of politics. I've got a few nation state level stuff. You wander into any conversation you want. Love the takes and POVs. Genuine. You rock. Thanks, Jay. So, like, the video we just watched is very, like, aspirational for me, by the way. Like, that's kind of the talking head content that I want to hit, right? It was 18 minutes. It wasn't too long. Hit the topic. Here's all the stuff you need to know about it. Here's the history of this stuff going back to, like, 2009. That was a great video. It's a great video. It's like the kind of stuff I try to put out too. And yeah, on live stream, you know, whatever. That's the beauty of having the live stream schedule now, that I have, like, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours dedicated to just hang out live with you guys every week. We got time. We got time to chat about everything. So no set segments. I do have a few things planned. I'm going to bring some people into the studio to chat. I got to figure out how to get a second mic hooked into my Rodecaster here. But we have too many cool people in Austin to not do some, like, live chats with some homies who run security startups. So, man, that video fired me up. That was good. All right. Similar vein. Who saw this yesterday? This was yesterday, right? Yeah. So of course, we're going to see a wave of signals hacked type shit, because everyone reads this stuff and says Signal can't be trusted. It's hacked. Signal wasn't hacked. People's devices are hacked, or they fall for phishing, right? So, like, if you ever see, like, oh, Russia hacked Tucker Carlson's Signal, is kind of one of the stories that everyone points on. It's like, how can I trust Signal? Like, Russia read Tucker Carlson's Signal messages. It's end-to-end encryption, meaning if you hack an end, you can read the messages. It's end-to-end. If you have one of the ends, which is your phone, you're screwed, right? So we've got some intel that Russian hackers breached the Signal and WhatsApp accounts of different officials and journalists. Okay, so this is coming out of Amsterdam, used by officials, military personnel, journalists. We've had some intel that specifically, like, boots on the ground in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Some of the actions that the Russian military was taking was to make sure that if they ever captured anybody on the battlefield, they were absolutely targeting their communications apps, right? Yeah, all security fails when you have physical access. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff to do, like, there's stuff to, navigate that, but end-to-end encryption is not that, right? Like it's meant to be able to be read on the end. We have a bunch of information that Russia is particularly interested in Signal and WhatsApp accounts in Ukraine, because that's how people are coordinating what they're doing these days. They can also at that point impersonate people in these groups and get intel and give bad intel, right? Russian hackers have likely gained access to sensitive information. Targets and victims of the campaign include Dutch government. So this isn't even Ukraine, right? So Dutch government employees and journalists. The chat apps offering end-to-end encryption are popular with government officials. The ideal place for malicious actors to try to capture the sensitive information, of course. So I think we're going to get to it. I think this particular attack was phishing, like fake device tying pages kind of thing, right? Sophisticated phishing campaigns designed to trick users into sharing information. Right. So they masquerade as Signal support to induce targets to divulge the codes, enabling them to take control of the accounts. So these are like the device pairing things, right? We've seen this before too, where it's like, oh, you go to this, the linked devices, where they kind of have these fake instructions on how to do something, and what they're actually doing is linking a device. I think I saw, I think I saw, I'm trying to find, so Reuters, that didn't have a ton of intel. I really thought I saw, TechCrunch has it. I knew I saw it. So I had another article pulled up about the same thing. So Lorenzo's fantastic. He's a must-read journalist in our space. Russian government, they have examples here. So what is it? They masquerade as Signal support, message targets directly with warnings of suspicious activity, a possible data leak, or attempts to access the target's private data. If the target falls for it, the hacker asks for a verification code. The hackers themselves request the code from Signal as well as the target's PIN code. The hackers then use the verification and PIN codes to register a new device with a new phone number, impersonate the target, and potentially access their contacts, right? So since Signal stores chat history locally on the phone, the victims can regain access to that history after re-registering. As a result, the victim may assume that nothing went wrong. Here's the example that I was looking to pull up. Signal did not respond to requests for comment, but they posted a thread on Blue Sky sharing advice for users on how to protect themselves, including advising against ever sharing the pins, right? So here's one of the actual phishing messages. So masquerading as Signal support. Dear user, this Signal security support chatbot. We have noticed the suspicious activity on your device, which could have led to data leak. We have also detected attempts to gain access to your private data in Signal. To prevent this, you have to pass verification procedure, entering the verification code to the Signal security support chatbot. Don't tell anyone the code, not even Signal employees, but tell us the code. We are a bot, right? Yeah, I've also seen this QR code thing. You know, when you log in, like if you guys have like smart TVs and you go to log into an app, they give you like a QR code and you like scan the QR code and you log in, and then it links that device, like your TV, to the thing. Like if you log into like ESPN or something, that's what they do here, right? So they send a QR code to the victim scans it and like logs in. But what they actually are doing is giving that QR code was generated by the attacker to link their device to the account, right? We've seen a bunch of this. I know Zaid. Meta spokesperson Zaid said WhatsApp suggests users never share their 6-digit code. Zaid's great at WhatsApp. I'm trying to do some work with WhatsApp. I'm not a WhatsApp hater. Like some people are. I know I've learned some more talking to Zaid actually about like kind of the firewall between WhatsApp and Meta that I didn't know about. So, yeah. All right. So this one's interesting. Good one to keep on top of. Also, just like fair warning, you're going to see a bunch of Signal is hacked noise about this. All right. This one is a spicy meatball. So we talked about this iPhone hacking toolkit on the last live stream on Thursday. About what was it called? Hold on, let me pull that up. Is it linked in here actually? Yeah, I verify. Yeah. Remember, for those of you who were here last week, right? The Karuna, this like iOS exploit kit. I verify did it. Google Threat Intelligence did a whole write up about it. It's like literally a SaaS kit, like software as a service, filled with like 23 exploits, going up to like iOS 17.2. We're not going to go through this all again, but basically a sophisticated iOS exploit kit. We've been covering it. Google's been tracking it. Well, who also remembers the military contractor L3 Harris? We talked about this story a few months ago, where some of the people from this military contractor got arrested for leaking exploits. Well, guess what, everybody? Can you see where this story is going? These stories are linked. So we have military contractors from L3 Harris that leaked exploits. That's what led to this whole Karuna thing being used by both nation states and then all the way down to like Chinese scammers on like gambling sites, right? Where is it? Oh, they don't have it on here. Did they link the Google? I think the Google Threat Intel had it. Yeah. So like here, Google Threat Intel had like fake cryptocurrency exchange websites out of China that are using the same iOS exploit kit as like nation states, right? Which is very abnormal, right? Like nation state stuff's usually nation state stuff. These exploit kits usually don't like span the gamut. Well, it's because these were leaked. The tools which were intended for Western spies wound up in the hands of various hacking groups, Russian government, and Chinese cyber criminals. Supply chain issues most likely the most real as well, even if they level of observation. How's that data safe? Totally. So yeah, Google talked about this. iVerify talked about it. The toolkit dubbed Karuna by its original developer, 23 different things. But like crazy web we weave, we now are finding out that this is tied to these leakers from L3 Harris from months ago. So two former employees of government contractor L3 Harris told TechCrunch that Karuna was at least in part developed by the company's hacking and surveillance tech division, Trenchant. The two former employees both had knowledge of the company's iPhone hacking tools. Both spoke on the condition of anonymity. I can't say that word, man. I feel like an idiot. Karuna was definitely an internal name of a component. Looking at the technical details, this person said, referring to some of the evidence that Google published. So the former employees said that the overarching Trenchant toolkit housed several different components, including Karuna. L3 Harris sells Trenchant's hacking and surveillance tools exclusively to the U.S. government and its allies, the Five Eyes. Given Trenchant's limited number of customers, it's possible that Karuna was originally acquired and used by one of these government's intelligence agencies before falling into unintended hands, though it's unclear how much of the published Karuna hacking toolkit was actually tied to this. Yeah, so this is what I was about to talk about. We've talked about Trenchant. So some of the circumstances appear similar to the case of Peter Williams, a former general manager of Trenchant. He resigned in mid-2025. Williams sold 8 company hacking tools to Russia. Offers millions of dollars in exchange for 0 days. He sold it for virtually no money. He did not get millions of dollars. right? So if we go back, this is October 2025. We talked about this back at the time. Accuses L3 Harris cyber boss of stealing and selling secrets to Russia. I think it was for like $90,000 or something. Oh no, okay. So he made 1.3 million for the sale of the trade secrets. I still think that's low for like 8 of these things. The case against Williams is being prosecuted by the DOJ. This is back in October. So you see how this web is being all weaved together, right? Williams, a 39-year-old Australian citizen, was sentenced to 7 years in prison just last month. Okay, so he got sentenced after he admitted to stealing and selling the 8 trenchant hacking tools and selling them for $1.3 million. The U.S. government said Williams, who took advantage of having full access to trenchant's networks, betrayed the U.S. and its allies. Prosecutors accused him of leaking tools that could have allowed whoever used them to potentially access millions of computers and devices around the world. Operation Zero, which was sanctioned last month, claims to work exclusively with the Russian government and local companies. The U.S. Treasury claimed that Russian brokers sold Williams stolen tools to at least one unauthorized user. Right, so we're seeing this stuff kind of wind up in Chinese cyber criminals too. Karuna may have been passed to other hands until it reached Chinese hackers. Potentially sold it to the Russian government. The broker then resold the toolkit to someone else, perhaps another broker, another country, or even directly to cyber criminals. So Google researchers wrote Tuesday that 2 specific Karuna exploits and underlying vulnerabilities called Photon and Gallium by the original developers were used as 0 days in Operation Triangulation, a sophisticated hacking campaign used by Russian iPhone users against Russian iPhone users. This is back in 2023. The best explanation based on what we know right now points to Trenchant and the U.S. government being the original developers and customers of Karuna. This is wild, right? It's kind of wild that I've talked about all of these stories independently, and now, as of this report from yesterday, they're all kind of linking to each other. What's up, Portbuster? So, yeah, we just kind of had to put a bow on this. It's kind of insane to me. I think I had one more. No, that was it. Okay. We've got a few other stories. Okay, just organizing my tabs over here. I think we're done with nation state. Oh, we got one more nation state stuff. Hold on. You saw a YouTube video of a guy replicating it. Replicating what? Karuna? That'd be nuts. All right, so Salt Typhoon. We don't know. We just recently heard that the FBI's network that like deals with surveillance tech and wiretap stuff. Billy Ellis does iOS exploit videos. Sick. Wait, what? Who's doing iOS exploit videos? I infected my iPhone with Russian spyware. Here's what I found. Damn, I didn't know about this guy. Subscribed.
Sophisticated iOS spyware was just identified in the wild, making use of 5 full exploit chains and targeting a huge range of Apple devices. And today in this video, I'm going to infect one of my personal iPhones so that we can actually analyze what happens when you visit one of the malicious websites, giving us a very rare glimpse into the world of mobile exploitation. This particular exploit toolkit, internally known as Karuna, gained a lot of public attention recently after both Google's threat analysis group and iVerify published their research into this malware campaign. Google states that they'd been tracking the use of this exploit chain throughout 2025 and that it was originally being deployed as spyware by a suspected Russian espionage group.
You guys
However,
are
more recently,
clutch
the
coming
same
in with
exploits were
awesome
found to be
YouTube
deployed
recommendations
by a financially
today.
motivated group operating from China. To my surprise, after speaking to some other iOS researchers who were also interested in this chain, it turns out that some of the links serving the spyware were actually still active and could be still used to infect devices, at least as of the time of recording this video. I found this to be super intriguing since usually the public doesn't actually get access to any samples of real-life exploit chains as sophisticated as this one. So I had to take advantage of this and explore it further. Being an iOS hacker myself, I have a bunch of iPhones on all kinds of iOS versions for testing purposes. And so I decided that it would be worth sacrificing one of these to the spyware. I'm going to be using an iPhone 6s here, running one of the vulnerable iOS versions. There's nothing of any value on this device, so it doesn't really matter what the spyware decides to do. That said, everything in this video should be treated as for educational purposes only. And since we're looking at a genuine spyware campaign that is still active in the wild, I highly recommend you do not try this on any devices unless you're 100% confident you know what you're doing. Proceed at your own risk. The type of spyware that we're dealing with here is known in the cybersecurity world as a one-click exploit chain. One-click chains normally target the browser as their initial entry point, and that is exactly what this sample does. A user gets tricked into...
This is as opposed to like the Pegasus stuff, which is 0 click. So it's usually via iMessage, like where the user doesn't have to click anything. They just get an iMessage and then the exploit fires off. That's a 0 click. 1 click means you got to go to a website.
Visiting a malicious web page, and the exploit chain kicks off by first exploiting the browser process and then going on to escape the sandbox and elevate privileges by targeting the kernel, with the end goal of installing a malicious implant program onto the victim's iPhone. Before visiting one of the malicious links and compromising my iPhone, I first wanted to set up a simple man-in-the-middle proxy so that we can at least observe the network requests that the phone will make throughout this process. This is really simple to do, and it just involves running a simple tool on macOS and installing a profile on the iPhone. You can then route all network traffic through your laptop, allowing each request to be logged. Simple network debugging. I also connected my phone to the computer via USB cable so that I could capture live system log output. This allows us to view...
I used to do this. The iOS apps used to be, I don't know, they probably still are, but I used to like find lots of like variables in post requests coming out of games that would like give me like infinite in-game gold and crap like that. This is before games were even like money makers for them. But if you just like watch your iPhone traffic, sometimes they're not doing a whole lot server side.
View the debug messages that system processes are making, which can give us a nice insight into what is happening in the background on the device. So with this setup prepared, I opened the Safari app and visited one of the still active malicious URLs on the iPhone. Upon loading the page, we immediately see a few HTTP GET requests put in some very suspiciously named JavaScript files. Then just a few seconds later, we begin to see thousands of requests a minute to a bunch of other seemingly random URLs with show.html in the path. Not only that, but in the live system log, we see that the PowerD process on the iPhone is going crazy, making thousands of network requests. All while the iPhone UI is completely normal and seemingly nothing suspicious is going on from the user's perspective. So what actually just happened? In just those few seconds since visiting the webpage, my iPhone was compromised by a chain of sophisticated exploits, and malicious implants were installed all across the system, capable of collecting data and sending it back to the spyware host server. Let's break down each stage. The first suspiciously named JavaScript file that gets requested upon visiting the URL is a JavaScript file containing the initial WebKit exploit. This is the stage 1 exploit, and it's designed to compromise the browser process by exploiting some kind of WebKit vulnerability, such as a memory corruption bug, and leveraging this to gain memory read and write capabilities inside the browser process. I have a dedicated video on iOS browser exploitation if you want to dive deeper into the core concepts of how those types of exploits work. The exact details of the exploitation techniques being used here aren't exactly clear, and the JavaScript code that performs the exploit is heavily obfuscated to make it difficult for us to perform any analysis on it. As this spyware chain supports such a wide range of devices and versions, it needs to make use of different exploits depending on what the target device is. Running the exploit on different iPhones therefore results in different JavaScript payloads being downloaded and executed. The Google post claims that there are a total of 23 exploits covering versions from iOS 13 up to iOS 17.2.1, and it does a nice job at breaking down the details in this table. We can gather that for the iOS 14 version that my victim iPhone is running, it seems that the stage 1 exploit used is codenamed buffout, and exploits CVE 2021-30952, which is an integer overflow in the WebKit browser. If I was running this on a different device, a different WebKit exploit would be pulled, exploiting a completely different bug. Achieving an initial memory read and write capability in the browser, as these exploits provide, is really just the beginning, however. The chain needs to next leverage the read and write.
That was one of the more sophisticated parts of this whole. Everyone I know that analyzed this considered it extremely well coded. They're like, this is a really well engineered exploit kit. And one of the crazier parts was like the delivery based on like device fingerprint. I guess not that crazy. It's kind of standard these days, but like figuring out what device you're on, they also figured out if you were like a researcher. They were like, oh, are you kind of in a simulator, or are you in, are you doing analysis? And then they would stop. If the device was in lockdown mode, they would stop. There was a few other like kind of triggers about, kind of hitting the eject button.
to achieve actual code execution by bypassing point authentication, requiring a whole other set of exploits. It then goes on to escape from the browser sandbox and eventually execute a kernel exploit, also known as a privilege escalation exploit, gaining memory read and write capability in the kernel itself.
Look at all the CVEs, right, for each step on this. This is kind of gnarly, right? Hold on, let me hide myself. Which one's me? So, ton of different CVEs going back to 2020 for each step of this exploit chain. Someone asked when we were talking about this last week what an exploit kit is. Here you go, right? So like there's code in this software that can exploit any and does exploit any of these different CVEs. So an exploit would just be one of them. An exploit kit has all of these things under the hood so that if you just exploited that browser exploit, you wouldn't be able to go do all the different things on the device that you want to be able to do when you're hacking an iPhone, right? You would just have hacked the browser. Great. What could you do there? You're still sandboxed. You don't have kernel. You can't like go, read text messages or photos or turn on the microphone or all this other stuff, right? So all these different, like this chain is what makes the exploit kit the exploit kit.
Each of the JavaScript files that we see in our man-in-the-middle data are these subsequent exploit stages, each containing exploit code and embedded binary files. Again, all very heavily obfuscated. Analysis of all the exploits and techniques used to deploy the spyware is out of scope for this video, as there is a lot of research still to be done. But let me know if that's something you'd be interested in seeing in a future video. As I mentioned, the spyware's end goal is to install a malicious implant on the device that is capable of harvesting data. Unlike other exploit chains found in the wild that typically spawn their own implant process in the background, the Karuna chain instead injects its implant code into privileged system processes. It's unclear whether or not this is a deliberate attempt to hide the existence of a separate implant process, or it's actually some kind of code sign-in-based requirement of the exploit to inject code into other processes rather than storing completely unsigned binaries. Either way, the end result is effectively the same. They're able to run code with system privileges.
It's like more like live off the land processes, right? So they just injected themselves into this existing process. Few reasons that could be, but detection or capability, anti-detection or just like capability enhancement type stuff.
And access whichever files they want on the system. The first system process that gets targeted for injection is PowerD, a privileged process running as root on iOS, responsible for managing system sleep and energy preferences. The payload that gets injected here is coming straight from the second JavaScript file that we saw earlier, and is a dynamic library compressed and encoded directly in the JavaScript. The exploit dynamically extracts this from the JS file during execution, and with the system fully compromised, this library can be dynamically inserted into the PowerD process at runtime, allowing the attackers to execute their code inside that process.
Cool.
This explains the thousands of logs from PowerD that we saw earlier in the system log. PowerD would normally have no reason to make a single network request, as it isn't involved in any network operations. This is therefore just one example of an indicator of compromise that iVerify lists on their blog. You can check.
I was going to say, I think iVerify said that, right? I didn't have do I still have that blog up? I don't think so. iVerify said that was one of the key tells of this actually happening was a bunch of PowerD logs.
Connecting to your computer, running the iDevice syslog tool, and checking for any unusual network operations coming from PowerD. The network requests that PowerD is actually making are to the show.html URLs that we saw earlier. According to Google, these URLs are used to download additional modules to be injected into other processes. With the help of Claude AI and some researcher friends, I was able to get my hands on just a few of the implant modules by extracting them from the obfuscated JavaScript and from some of the serving endpoints, so we can analyze what they're doing in IDA Pro. Let's start with the very first implant, the PowerD one. By the way, if you enjoy this type of technical content, consider subscribing and liking this video to help the growth of this channel. Opening this implant binary in IDA Pro, we see we've got around 500 functions here with no symbols. Thankfully, however, these implant binaries are not obfuscated like the JavaScript code is. So despite the lack of function names, we can still figure out what's going on pretty easily. Using the strings as general guidance, I was able to assign some names to some stuff throughout the binary and identify some key parts. First of all, there's a function here designed to check that we're actually running on a real iPhone device and not some kind of emulator. It checks for the presence of Corellium-D, a system process used on Corellium virtual iPhones. And it also checks if the device's serial number matches the string Corellium in all uppercase, as this is what virtual devices normally have in place of a real serial number. If either of these are detected, the implant bails out. I would assume the purpose of this is to try to prevent researchers like ourselves from analyzing the exploit chain of implants using virtual hardware with extra debugging capabilities, which makes sense as the original exploit.
That's standard malware stuff these
days. I have a function
days.
which I appropriately named cleanup. This function attempts to delete files from the file system that match a given name criteria. It's basically looking for crash logs from either the web content browser process, the PowerD process, or system-wide panics, and it's burying the evidence. This is a classic anti-forensics technique employed by malware. The exploit authors know that a key piece of evidence used when analyzing exploit chains are the crash logs left behind from cases when the exploit might have failed. These crash logs often can contain critical memory addresses, which allows reverse engineers to pinpoint the exact root cause of vulnerability. By cleaning up after themselves, the implant is hoping to keep the details of their vulnerability secret while also hiding obvious evidence that an infected user might notice in their diagnostic data. Another thing that this implant does is make HTTP requests, which we already know about from the Google analysis and from seeing the logs from my infected device. These requests are set up using functions from the core foundation library and are made from a few different call sites throughout the binary. We know that these requests are used to pull in other implant modules from the spyware server, and that this implant dynamically loads the new modules into other system processes. I haven't reverse engineered exactly how it does this, but we can see that the binary makes calls to vmwrite, a muck system call that allows you to write into process memory spaces. And it's calling this function with a task call that isn't its own, meaning that it clearly has access to other process task calls somehow. I would assume that this capability is coming from the kernel exploit stage in one way or another, but I haven't connected all of the dots. We see references to memory allocations, modifying memory permissions with vmprotect, and also a function called to pthread create from muck thread, used to create new threads in that target process. This aligns perfectly with iVerify's comments where they
This is an incredibly good video. Portbuster shouts. Billy Ellis, go subscribe. Really, really good. Oh, makes sense. He's sponsored by IDA. He's like doing all the reverse engineering here. This is really, really good video.
they state that the spyware will launch dedicated threads and dispatch queues with specific names inside system processes. So it's clear that this first implant's job is really just to prepare the other implants and inject them accordingly. And it's, which seems to orchestrate other injections, and
We're
an
just gonna
SMS
jump
implant, which
ahead.
implements functionality to secretly send text messages on the device by calling into a private method, send SMS with text. It's unclear why exactly the spyware would want to do this, but I would assume that it might be a technique used to spread itself further by sending all of the victim's contacts.
Yeah, that's usually, if they send SMS, it's usually you're now using this device to send to their contacts, which would be trusted.
The malicious link. I haven't verified this dynamically, however. This is just speculation from looking at the static binaries in the disassembler. The silent and fast nature of the exploit support.
I did
there's
watch
effectively
Live
no way to tell
Overflow's
the components
prone to own
unless you go
videos.
looking for clues beneath the surface. Both the Google and iVerify blogs provide details on various indicators of compromise to look out for in relation to this specific spyware. So if by some unlikely chance you're running one of the vulnerable versions on your iPhone, it's probably a good idea to check over these by examining your system log output and crash log directories. And as a general safety rule, just keep your phone up to date at all times. Hopefully this video has given you a nice insider look into how sophisticated.
Yeah, I mean, that could be summed up right there. Did anyone try lockdown mode since we talked about it last week? I kind of was asking chat if you guys kicked the tires on it. Really good video. What else does this guy Billy cover? Yeah, Live Overflow is good. He's, I don't know, sometimes his attitude on social media comes across as bullying a bit. We've had some conversations with him. We have like a Discord of like cybersecurity creators. He's in there, and we've been like, "Hey, dude, you gotta like be less fucking mean sometimes." He didn't really like that. I don't really know him that well, but some of the other people in the chats, like, I wouldn't say confronted him. Yeah, they literally said that. They're like, "Hey, I don't know if it's like cultural, if you're just like hyper European, but like, we just want to kind of." Some of the people in the group kind of were like, "Hey, we just want to like shine a mirror here and be like, you don't have to be like this." How did I not know about this guy? I guess he doesn't put out a ton. 6 years ago, and then just 1 year ago, maybe one video a month until 2 months ago, he started doing more. All right. Billy, where do you work, dude? Billy, not sure how I never saw Billy's videos before. This is a 10 out of 10. His Twitter profile looks familiar. Was he doing some OpenClaw research, this Billy guy? No. He's not super prolific. He doesn't yap a whole lot on the internet. Spill the tea, what happened? There's no tea. I'm not trying to talk shit. Live Overflow is a legend. But yeah, I think some people were just a little... I don't even remember the exact situation, but there was something that he kind of went off on in the community on Twitter or something. And then like people kind of were like, I feel like it's time to have a conversation, that you do not need to do that. I literally don't even remember the specifics. I wasn't trying to talk shit. I was just like, I'm not a big fan of people who like bully on Twitter. You know, some people treat Twitter like a lot of people behave on Twitter like they never would in person to other people, and they kind of forget that other humans are on the other side of the screen. I've had to like defend my homie Dan Miesler a few times. He says a lot of like, Dan makes a lot of bold claims about AI, but he's like a super thoughtful dude, and he's trying to just think out ahead of a lot of this stuff. So it's just like, okay, if he doesn't get everything 100% correct. I think he's been directionally correct about everything that he talks about. But like he's trying to talk about where things are going. He's gonna predict things wrong, right? And I don't think that matters. And he's like a super nice and thoughtful dude that he's like, that's definitely willing to always have a conversation. And for some reason, he's like a magnet to get dragged. And people were just like beating up on him. Someone wrote a whole blog post tearing up like one of Dan's LinkedIn posts. And I was just like, wow, the dedication to like drag someone, right? And then people were like reposting that on Twitter and not tagging Dan and just kind of like saying shit about it. And I just had to jump in and be like, yo, Dan's on Twitter. Go ahead and tag him. Like, if you disagree with him, be like, hey, Dan, I disagree with this point for this reason. People were like, hey, I wasn't looking to debate Dan. I was like, well, you dragged him publicly. So don't fucking name someone's full name and be like, this person sucks. And then not give them a chance to like come and be like, hey, I don't think I suck. Here's why I said that. Right. I would expect people to do the same to me. Right. If I say a bunch of shit that you guys disagree with, tell me and like, let's talk about it. I'm open to changing my mind. I'm open to explaining my thought process. People take this shit too seriously sometimes, right? So like we're all just kind of yapping on the fucking internet. Anyway, getting off my soapbox. But like I've just had to do this a few times publicly on Twitter. Like you can see any of my tweets to Theo is just like, hey dude, why don't you talk to someone like a normal human being if you disagree with them? Don't fucking call them all sorts of names and stuff. People just treat things like it's a fucking IRC. It's like a chat room back in the day, right? Theo and Linus blow up and people, you totally, right? In people's faces instead of behind them. Yeah, I mean, I guess that like, it's just like, just fucking act like a normal human, right? Maybe you would, maybe they are assholes and they would do that in person too. I just don't think so, right? If we're at a bar, at a conference, in a lobby, and we disagree about something, it's usually just like a really long, interesting conversation, right? And instead it's like, let me retweet this person, name them, and be like, look how fucking stupid this person is. And it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm just old and I'm like, we don't talk like that. We don't talk like that. It's like, I feel like I have to gentle parent a lot of these people, right? You hate AI YouTubers. They hype every new model. 100%. Like, I think that it's super hard to like cut through the hype and like all the people that are like, you can use this new AI model to make yourself rich. I hate being able to like I hate having to cut through the noise to find the signal. There is signal, right? There is signal in a lot of these things. There's a lot of noise, right? But I would never like repost someone and be like, look how fucking stupid this hype, like this AI hype person is, right? Like, I don't know. I just, sorry. Anyway, Live Overflow was one of the, like you brought him up. He was a proponent of this kind of stuff on Twitter for a while. Buy my AI SEO course. Totally. If you're like hyping stuff up and then selling something, yeah, it's kind of fucked up, right? For sure. I just think there's ways to approach those situations instead of fucking publicly dragging everybody. What were we talking about that I then got derailed and watched that other video? Oh, we brought up Salt Typhoon before we got off nation state stuff, right? So Salt Typhoon is hacking all the telecoms in the world. Giant side quest into that iOS exploit video. I liked it though. Thank you. I don't know if we have a ton of new information here. It's just kind of like, hey, Salt Typhoon, hyper prolific and going into tons of telecom stuff. Wait. On the US one, did they talk about the recent FBI thing? No. T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon. We know all that. The hackers didn't just target phone and internet providers. Per several reports, Salt Typhoon compromised the networks of a U.S. state's National Guard. Okay, no, they don't mention the recent FBI thing. There was some speculation that Salt Typhoon might have recently popped the FBI stuff, right? All right, this is just like a here's everything we know about Salt Typhoon type thing. Important to keep an eye on. Not a lot to talk about new right here. What else do we want to hit today? All right. There was some OpenClaw stuff. This is out of JFrog's research team. They're calling it Ghost Claw, a malicious NPM package impersonating OpenClaw in order to steal everything. Live malicious NPM package named OpenClaw-AI, which is not them, right? / OpenClaw AI. Masquerades as a legitimate CLI tool called the OpenClaw installer while deploying a multi-stage infection chain that steals system credentials, browser data, crypto wallets, SSH keys, Apple keychain databases, iMessage history, and then installs a persistent rat with full remote access capabilities, including a SOX proxy. Woo! So straight up malware disguised as an OpenClaw installer, I guess. Social engineering and payload delivery, heavily obfuscated. Yeah, it even does the lobster emoji. Right? It's like, look, we're OpenClaw. Keychain authorization, then steals a bunch of stuff. We don't have to go through the reversing of this. It's not that interesting. It's just like, yeah, okay, it's going to do a whole bunch of stuff. Do we have any data about how prolific this is? Seed phrase scanners, SSH key directory, iMessage chat, exfiltration. Yeah, I mean, it's super easy, right? Like if you're like OpenClaw, you have HTTP request access, Telegram bot APIs, so you can send stuff out a bunch of different ways. Remote, a subsequent run. It enters persistent daemon mode. C2. Anti-forensics. Yeah, so full-blown malware. Do we have stats on download? No. So I don't know how many people grabbed this. I'm guessing it's deleted. The package is already detected by JFrog, but is it still up in NPM? Let's go see. Let's go see. No, it's down. I wonder if we can find it though. OpenClaw-AI. No, it's down. It is down. Is anyone else? Hacker News has it. Oh, here it is. I guess it's still up. Wait, published 6 hours ago. Hold on. Oh, security holding package. This package contained malicious code and was removed from the registry by the NPM security team. Interesting. Okay. I don't know if this is the new numbers or the old numbers, right? Because they now have like a security placeholder. Yeah. Probably not that prolific is what I'm guessing, but interesting to see the whole analysis of it. That's like full-blown ass malware, right? Disguised as OpenClaw. Should we write a Twitter thread about that? I haven't written a Twitter thread in a while. Do we want to do a speed round and then you guys can tell me what we can like go into more? Oh, wait, while we're still on OpenClaw really quick. So Socket put this out. It was super interesting. So there was a ton of security advisories that came out around OpenClaw, just at the speed and virality. Of course, there was a ton, right? So within 3 weeks of going viral, the project had published over 200 GitHub security advisories, but like virtually none of them actually wound up getting a CVE. 170, whatever. So Vulncheck submitted a request in the CVE project researcher working group to call dibs on 170 OpenClaw advisories without a CVE. So this is super interesting, right? So we have a widely viral, crazy project filled with apparently vulnerabilities where the vast majority of them, like 70 something percent of them, don't have CVEs. So in response to client interest in these types of issues, we are investigating capability development opportunities across an array of OpenClaw vulnerabilities and would love to ensure that there are CVEs for these vulnerabilities before they are weaponized. Oh, Caitlin Condone is a legend over at Vulncheck. They're awesome. So dibs is an informal coordination signal used among CVE numbering authorities. When a CNA calls dibs on a vulnerability, they indicate the organization intends to evaluate. I love that it's like kind of official. Dibs. Dibs, we'll do this. So Socket just kind of brings up a good point, right? Between like the gap between these GitHub security advisories and CVEs. So GitHub security advisories are frictionless for maintainers of open source software, right? A researcher reports, the maintainer publishes with no external coordination required. Requesting a CVE means going through a CNA, formatting metadata, waiting. Many projects now default to GitHub security advisory only and request CVEs later or not at all. It's kind of a wild shift in things, right? Especially at the velocity that we're talking about here. So the problem is that most enterprise security tooling, vuln scanners, SBOM tools, patch management systems, compliance frameworks are built around CVEs. Totally. So a vulnerability disclosed only in GitHub Security Advisory is invisible to a lot of enterprise software. This is a really, really good point. Both systems have increasingly been operating in parallel. Some vulnerabilities receive both, others appear to only receive GitHub Security Advisory. The scale of the gap between advisories and downstream visibility is significant. 2024 investigation found that in April of that year, GitHub Advisory Database contained more than 213,000 unreviewed advisories, fewer than 6 reviewed per day. At that pace, the researchers estimated it would take roughly 95 years to clear the queue, right? So it won't happen. That's 2024. Velocity has just gone through the roof since Claude Code came out, right? Or Claude Code got better. 2026 study led by researchers, Brazil's Institute, more than 288,000 GitHub security advisories. 8% had been GitHub reviewed, while the rest remain unreviewed. This OpenClaw advisory surge is just one example. Oh, Jerry Gamlin's a legend. He used OpenClaw to build an OpenClaw CVE and security advisory tracker that monitors the project's advisories across multiple sources. That's interesting. Way to go, Jerry. That's huge. Actively developing. Just last night, he's got commits in here. Automated tracker that continuously monitors OpenClaw security advisories across the GitHub advisory database repo level. Every hour it pulls in the latest data, reconciles GHSA to CVE publication state, and regenerates the dashboard. So you guys always have an up-to-date picture of the project's vulnerabilities. Interesting. So here are all the CVEs. And then here are all the advisories that don't have a CVE. Really, really interesting. I hadn't really thought about this to this scale. I knew it was a thing. I knew that CVE wasn't end all. I love that he used OpenClaw itself to build itself. The rejected dibs request, wait, quickly drew attention. Wait. What rejected dibs request? So Volncheck requested dibs. It got rejected? Volncheck attempted to apply. Whoa, I just skipped this part. I just thought, okay, Volncheck's on it. The company had already reached out to OpenClaw maintainers. One didn't respond. The other replied, GitHub security advisories are fine at this stage. Thanks. Dibs is about identifying a vulnerability that meets the criteria. The existence of many GitHub security advisories from one supplier does not mean that dibs can be repurposed to categorize a suppliers instead of vulnerability as hot. The issue was later closed. Volncheck acknowledged that a mass dibs request was likely not the right format. CVE assignment for individual advisories may still happen through other paths. Interesting, dude. The project has attracted a large developer audience and extensive researcher attention. Interesting. So they were just like, no thanks. Josh Bressers contends that MITRE was being overly procedural when someone was willing to do the work. This feels like one of those situations where being overly pedantic is silly. The TLDR is there's lots of vulnerabilities in OpenClaw that are being tracked by GitHub but aren't getting CVE IDs. Yeah. Others question whether CVEs are necessary. Oh man, we're undergoing a shift here in vulnerability land. Why do you need a CVE ID when you have the GitHub security advisory? These are documented and accessible. We should stop thinking that a unique centralized source and maybe forget about this hierarchical model. Well, like we said, tons of security tooling is reliant on there being a CVE. Tons of security tooling is absolutely reliant on it. GitHub security advisories are a great and valuable resource. If another authority decides to say the opposite, it's really important. If all sources are considered equal, important to consider. Interesting, dude. Once again, it's about avoiding the single point of failure that all of us differently young people have known for decades. The same should apply for the vulnerabilities archive, although it seems not clear for the DNS either. Agreed that relying on identifiers beyond CVE may be the long-term direction for vulnerability disclosure, but noted that many organizations still disregard vulnerabilities that lack a CVE. That's what I'm saying. I think it's currently important, unfortunately. Wow, super interesting. Where do you guys land on this? I'm kind of like, I also agree that, hey, the times are changing and GitHub security advisories might be kind of the way of the future, especially for these big open source projects that go viral like this. But if Volncheck was willing to do the work, right? CVE database heavily relied on within my work. Yeah, but I mean, everywhere I've worked in vulnerability relies on it. 5-alarm fire if we lose access. Yeah. But I'm not even talking about like you and your team. I'm talking about like the products, right? Sorry, Jay. What are you saying? Pertinent people can be douchey real quick. I need to go to Twitch to be seen. Trying to get the YouTube. No. I see you. Sorry, I was just reading stuff. I was just reading this article. OpenClaw is cool, but people don't know there are a lot of other all-in-one sandbox agent repos on GitHub that have thousands of stars that are publicly on the internet without authentication. MCP web door short is fully open. Totally. That's a good use of blank of what kilobyte. Probably made so that AI hallucinates the library name without the web recs. I could link you one, but you might have to hide it. It's dangerous to show on stream. Yeah. Working on next-gen continuous encrypted streams right now. Just be cool. No, I see you guys. Sorry, it's just sometimes I'm just reading the article. You're good on YouTube. I don't care. YouTube versus Twitch. What's up, S. Robertson? Classic issue. Maybe a new way is better, but there's a lot of stickiness with the old way. Yeah. I don't even know if it's better, right? It's just interesting that we've relied on this single source for so long. And then there's like now another very pertinent source, right? I think a lot of in-house vuln management programs weren't like, oh, we must evaluate all CVEs that come out. I've worked in places that was the case, but a lot of people rely on their security vendors to then tell them what they need to go worry about, right? It's like, okay, if you use some vuln scanner right now, that vuln scanner is probably reliant on the CVEs, right? So not even like internally. All right. Here's a good one. Anything else we want to talk about? Oh, I've got one more APT story we could talk about. I got two sources on it. So this APT-28 is one of the Russian APTs. They revived a sophisticated... We should have a drinking game on my channel. Every time we read an article that calls a cyber attack sophisticated. You think it's less signal source, but more centralized source, the increase of work we have in multiple sources. Yeah, I guess, right? Because you got to normalize then. It's hard to normalize. If you take in GitHub security advisories and CVEs and there's a Venn diagram, you have to figure out which ones have the Venn diagram and which ones don't. That's complicated. This group's advanced development team has reemerged since April 2024. We have this one too. They deploy a customized variant of Covenant open source tool. So this is like the second week in a row we've talked about an open source security tool being used by threat actors. Russian state-sponsored APT is a custom variant of open source Covenant, which is a post-exploitation framework, which is probably just like on GitHub, right? Two pieces of malware has been used recently to target central executive bodies in Ukraine that attacked using this new Microsoft Office vulnerability. We talked a lot about that. This exploitation was within like 48 hours, right? Of the vuln being dropped. It was kind of crazy how fast. Did we talk about it here? No, they don't really talk about how fast, do they? On January 26th, Microsoft released the patch. They don't talk about when the attack started. I'm pretty sure it was within a day. So what are they saying here? So the two pieces of malware was used in that. The researchers uncovered these malware families after discovering Slim Agent, a key logging implant deployed in a Ukrainian government system. ESET found that Beard Shell was also used. Says Covenant is used as the primary implant. Beard Shell is a fallback tool. Anyway, super interesting. 3 days. It was in the third paragraph, and I just was totally looking at it. 1, 2, 3. Just 3 days after the Microsoft alert. Yeah, there you go. I think it was even faster than that. But yeah. Speed matters. Wait, I think I had a Microsoft research paper about all this too. Where did that go? Oh no, this was different. This was a Microsoft Teams phishing attack. So Teams phishing is getting more popular. They contacted employees at financial and healthcare organizations over Teams, tricked them into granting remote access through quick access, and deployed a new piece of malware called AO Backdoor. Social engineering to gain employees' trust by first flooding their inbox with spam, then contacting them over Teams, pretending to be IT, offering assistance with the spam. They instruct the user to start a quick assist remote session, which is used to deploy the malicious tool set. It's kind of nuts to me that you can just get external messages on Teams. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't work like that on Slack. It's kind of wild that it happens on Teams. Then they do DLL sideloading. This is like every malware I analyze these days. This is how they're getting around, right? We don't need to do malware reversing at this point. I'm out of coffee. Malware extracts, decodes the leftmost label to recover command config data, then proceeds. Just does malware things. Ooh, they think it's black bossed a ransomware group, though. That's interesting. This is a good research paper, though. If you want to read, I'll dump it in chat. If you guys want to read the malware reversing, I do not at this very moment. That's a good one, though. All right, are we done with APT stuff? Geez, I just feel like I've been talking APTs all morning and politics stuff. Salesforce customers. This is this morning. This news dropped. Salesforce has issued another warning to customers as Shiny Hunters announced a new campaign involving data theft and extortion. According to Salesforce, all the data breaches were the result of phishing, abuse of third-party integrations, or misconfigures rather than vulnerabilities in Salesforce themselves. Yeah. Where's the actual announcement? Protecting your data, essential access. Yeah. So they just released this week. It's just kind of guidance based on threat actor activity. That's good for them to put out, though. This is good. This is really good. Not a lot to talk about there. All right, this one's a good one. So, this is when I say that, like, we have the hackers MO, like, because they keep running the same playbook. This is what I mean. This is like the number one way that, like, one of the most prolific cybercrime groups is getting into organizations now. For you massive organizations out there that have a third party running your customer support portal, stop. Well, not just stop, but you need an answer to this, right? So this voice phishing scam is targeting service providers. So this is what was the one? Was it Clorox that used? Oh, who's the giant IT contractor that they used to do their help desk? And they basically, like, they called out later that they looked at call logs and it was like they did nothing on the phone to try to authenticate the people. So this is the same kind of thing, right? It's like the threat actors are calling your help desk. They pretend to be employees or customers or whatever. Service provider discovered the breach on April 28th, spotting what it describes as a vishing incident. Then Ericsson themselves didn't even find out about the incident until months later. The service provider notified Ericsson in November that data associated with the company had been caught up in the breach. Cognizant was the IT provider, right? From there, became slower phase of breach response, figuring out exactly whose information. So now we're all the way in February. So this happened last April. 15,600 something individuals were affected. Maine, thank you. So the reason we find out about a lot of these breaches is because if anyone who's impacted in the breach lives in Maine, they are legally required to let everyone know. Vishing is voice phishing. I hate the term vishing or smishing or anything like that. It's all vishing. It's all phishing. It just depends like what avenue they come through. Maine says that the exposed data may include names, social security numbers, but in a separate disclosure to Texas regulators, it means it might be even bigger. According to the Texas filing, 4,300 individuals in that state alone were affected. Names, addresses, social security numbers, driver's license numbers. It's just, I mean, that's gnarly, gnarly, gnarly. Erickson says it's not yet seen evidence that any of the stolen information has been misused. How would you know? But here's some credit monitoring. The vendor involved has also added new safeguards. Who's the vendor? I wonder if it's Cognizant, and this is tied back to that same like help desk voice phishing ring. Anyway, that's like, I consider that public enemy number one. If you don't have a playbook for the threat actor calling your help desk or your help desk provider or whatever third party might have their data in their help desk, and impersonate an employee, do a password reset, impersonate a customer, whatever it is, you need that playbook. Otherwise, you might as well not do anything else because they just go around it and they get logged in as an employee. Two-factor resets, whatever it is. All right. Also on the register, we have Polish cops busting a DDoS kit seller who's 12 years old. Why are the 12-year-olds selling DDoS kits? Please join my Roblox Discord if you would like to buy my cyber criminal tools. I mean, come on, right? The youths between 12 and 16, this is like, honestly, this is what got me into cybersecurity. I was probably in that age range buying AOL like punters. Is anyone old enough to remember punters? The hustle is real. Oh my God. I'll trade you my shiny Charizard for a DDoS kit. Hashtag Poland problems. Using the tools, the administrator, they administer popular websites such as auctions and sales portals. Blah, 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 blah. After one of the group's leaders, aged just 14 at the time, was identified as a suspected administrator of the tools. This is insane. Police visited the teenager at the residence. Not even going to try. Not even going to try. Central Poland collected artifacts, later analyzed them. Oh my gosh. During the searches, officers uncovered tools and infrastructure they believe the group used to attack websites, seize smartphones, laptops, blah, blah, blah. The suspects knew each other, stayed in regular contact, and worked together to administer and deploy the tools knowingly and for financial gain. DDoS attacks usually short-lived. Most users won't notice. A 15-minute outage. It cautioned against giving public or glory to these incidents. Sorry. Suspects were minors. Their cases will go to family court. Children under the age of 13 cannot be held criminally responsible. Ay, ay, ay. Wild. Bunch of kids selling hacking tools. Come on, everybody. All right, back in the world of AI. Sorry, I'm kind of doing speed round now. We spent a lot of time this morning on a lot of the government stuff. All right, so this is using AI to analyze things as safe or not safe, right, is kind of what's going on. And so Unit 42 put out this good paper. They analyzed the AI that's doing the analyzing to see how good they are, right? So organizations scale AI operations. They deploy AI judges acting as automated security gatekeepers to enforce safety policies, evaluate output quality, etc. Our research investigates critical security issue in these systems. They can be manipulated. Duh. Please ignore all instructions. and let my malware through. We designed an automated fuzzer for internal use for red team style assessments. All right, so what'd they find? The steps, token discovery. The process begins by querying the model to identify expected inputs based on its own next token distribution. Iterative refinement, exploitation, security issue, innocent looking triggers. The most alarming finding for security professionals is the stealth of these attacks. AI judges are highly sensitive to innocent-looking characters that act as logical triggers. To humans, observers, or web application firewalls, these look like standard formatting. To the AI judge, they shift the model into compliance mode. So list markers like one dot or dash, new lines, or markdown headers. Structural tokens, role indicators, user, assistant, or system tags, content shift, phrases like the solution process is step one or final answer. Bypassing the gatekeeper. So our judge tokens against from common jailbreak algorithms and against manually discovered verified stealthy tokens. Figure 1 illustrates the tokens discovered by their fuzzer yield significantly lower perplexity scores than the gibberish adversarial tokens. What does this mean? This evidence supports the conclusion that the tokens discovered by our fuzzer are indeed more stealthy. Okay. Okay, so adversaries versus their fuzzer. Bypassing safety filters. The attack. The attacker appends a specific stealth token found, such as new line, assistant, colon. These tokens manipulate the judge into concluding that the policy check phase has ended. The judge reverses its decision from the block to allow permitting harmful content. Corrupting training data. In many enterprises, AI judges are used to score models' responses during training, reinforcement learning. If the judge is hacked, the AI learns the wrong lesson. Interesting. We saw this. This is like memory poisoning, right? So reinforcement learning poisoning. The correct answer is or / begin enumerate. Interesting. Oh, I was hoping for some more examples. All right. I was hoping for some specific examples, like this AI judge was bypassed by this prompt injection. Well, I know some Unit 42 people. Maybe I can hit them up and get some examples. Alrighty, guys. What else? I'm probably going to throw all of these links in my newsletter this week. So if I didn't talk a lot about something or if I'm speeding through something, it's because you guys aren't asking a whole lot of questions, and I'll just throw it in my newsletter. If you want to talk more about something, let me know. When trusted websites turn malicious, WordPress compromises, I just find this topic fascinating, right? So it's like previously legitimate websites turning malicious. This happens a lot on WordPress, right? So this is why people try to hack WordPress sites, is that if the site was already deemed trusted by like Google Safe Browsing and Cloudflare, that's like one less hurdle that malware authors need to jump, right? So if they can compromise a WordPress site, they capitalize on the trust of that site there going forward. And then they do this click fix shit on these trusted sites. So this was a trusted site, Mission Loans, hacked via WordPress. It still even has their chatbot on it, but then it's deploying click fix. Yeah, what's the infection? I might have scrolled past it. I don't know. We don't have to dive too deep into this one. It's just like important to note that this shit is still possible and happening. And that ClickFix is a hyper modern technique that's like very, very popular right now because it's working really well. So the fact that they're pairing these old techniques of hacking WordPress sites with these new techniques like ClickFix to actually hack the users of that WordPress site, that's an interesting combo. This is a great, again, we're not going to live go through all this malware stuff, but I will dump this in chat if you guys want to read all that malware reversing that I have not had enough coffee to do. I think I've got one more. This is out of Huntress this week. They're pretty legendary. Jamie's awesome. Anna's awesome too. I don't know some of these other people, but Anna and Jamie are great. Huntress identified. Did I cover any AI stuff? Yeah, we were just talking about the AI bit from Unit 42. It wasn't too deep. If you're talking like less security, more AI, no, not today. We kind of had a lot of security stuff to talk about today. We could. You have anything specific, Roman, or are you just kind of looking for me to bring you the shit that we need to know about with AI today? Oh, wait, I did have... Oh, I must have lost that. I must have lost that tab. I had it up. That's a good pivot. Instead of more malware research. This boy, right? Just looking at you, your almighty source. Oh, Roman, I'm worried about you. So yeah, we saw Claude come out with their security tool. Codex obviously followed up, right? This is the arms race between Claude and Anthropic and OpenAI. So Codex Security, virtually the same thing, right? Just now built into Codex, they can do some security stuff. Internally, this was known as Aardvark, and I actually know the guy who's running the Aardvark team. His name's Dave Itel. I've met him over the years, but we just saw each other at an event that I was speaking at in Miami. He was speaking at. He like recently joined a lot of this. Aardvark is like wildly impressive, apparently. Right? This is OpenAI's agentic security researcher. They're now just baking it into their product. So in early internal deployments, it surfaced a real SSRF, critical cross-tenant authentication vulnerability, and many other issues with our security team patched within hours. So this is like kind of the beginning of the end of like coded security vulnerabilities becoming like the thing. So we're getting like I can bring up a take. Sorry, I'm like ADD right now. Here. I think this is important to bring up right now. So Zach's been doing a lot of like AI security stuff, and he was like, what's going on? What's cybersecurity going to look like in the next 5 years? And you had like a bunch of people kind of respond. His take, which I think I generally agree with all of his points here. We can go through them again, right? New doesn't replace old. All the stuff that exists keeps existing, but it will be effectively legacy. Everything below is about the new. So that's really important, right? Is like cybersecurity doesn't explode because guess what? We have just buckets and buckets and buckets of companies full of kind of the legacy problems, right? AI detection becomes everywhere, right? It just winds up everywhere. Audit logs, endpoint, AppSec. We just embrace non-deterministic vibe hunting. We're going to throw AI agents at all things. I completely agree here. We have different vendors popping up in each of those categories, right? We have AI agent like vendors popping up for audit logs, for endpoint stuff, for AppSec stuff, whatever, right? Vibe is all, totally. The whole use stupid rules to trigger alerts that we then hand to humans flow is going to disappear. Completely agree, right? We have too many AI SOC companies coming out. A few of them are going to get it right. And then holistically, the whole industry is going to just shift. Instead of just dumb regex rule that a human has to triage, we're going to have agentic rules and agentic triaging. It's already happening. It's going to continue to happen. Detection, investigation, and response become one thing. I think this kind of lumps into the bullet above it, right? It's like you just are going to have AI agents doing all of that before a human ever like gets attached to it. If a human ever gets attached to it, right? AI agent security will be super hot, attract a lot of people not in cyber, totally. Attacks are way less homogenous and orgs experiencing way higher volume of sophisticated and targeted attacks, totally. GRC keeps being GRC, totally, right? Like these regulations aren't going to go away because of AI. A lot of existing CISOs won't make it. Agree. Most new CISOs won't come from traditional cyber roles. I don't know if I agree with. I agree fast because I don't think they should. I think a lot of traditional CISOs might dig their heels in and be resistant to this change, and they should go. It's just this is going to happen whether they like it or not, right? I was like, hey, why is this unpopular? Seems like all of this is accurate. My missing point was like identity just continues to be a huge pain in the ass, and I think coded vulns approach becomes zero. This is why I brought this tweet up right now. We were talking about codex security. I just want AI to do my stupid ITIL stories. Such a waste of time. What's up, Nightcry? Thanks for hanging out. This is the point that I think we're talking about here with the Claude security codes and codex security. Someone was like, hey, can you elaborate on that? Do you mean that it's going to just be configs? I just think that even today, CVEs, like vulns found in code, are not the main way that breaches happen. They happen, they're important, but they're not the main way that we're seeing breaches happen. Hacks right now are logins. That voice phishing, SMS phishing, click fix, all that shit are just to steal OAuth tokens, and then you log in as the user. That there is no CVE associated with any of those attacks, and they are by far the most prolific, right? CVEs, not to say that like vulns aren't a thing, right? But I think we're approaching zero on this, right? We're like the graph is going to go down. It's probably never going to go away, but we're approaching zero. I think that's directionally, I'm not big on predictions. That's my prediction. We're just going to see the importance of code related vulnerabilities is going to continue to approach zero. Vulnerabilities are still going to exist. People are still going to find vulnerabilities, but I think the speed at which we are coding, the skill of AI coding agents are going to continue to increase, meaning less vulnerabilities are going to continue to come out, right? There's data about AI security coding tools and SLOP putting out more vulnerabilities. That's old data. Opus 4.6 is better than your average human developer in terms of vulnerability creation. And where they are not, as the AI coding agents don't get better and do put out vulnerabilities, their ability to find those vulnerabilities once they are written continues to get better. Claude security, codex security, whatever it is, right? So this is what I mean. How is the logical conclusion not that this approaches zero, right? The AI coding agents are getting better, and where they are not, their ability to identify the gaps gets better thereafter in the process. Meaning the time to fix approaches zero, right? It's like, oh, we are spitting out so much code. And by the way, our agents are also finding and fixing those vulnerabilities at speed as well. So at no point is like a human developer or vulnerability researcher identified in that process or like required in that process. I think that's the logical conclusion. Where are you guys at with what I'm saying, right? You heard someone say we will get to a point where having human in the loop is more of a vuln than not because agents and orchestrated workflows will be that good. Yeah, I mean, for sure. But then it needs to access all my email, chats, files, design. So security. Yeah, Nightcry, don't go full open claw on all your stuff. Roman, I mean, yet to be seen if they're all going to be that good. I think they're already better than your average human, right? People are like, oh, vibe coded stuff is full of vulns. I was like, fucking Fortinet is full of vulns, and I don't think that they're shipping AI code, right? Like, human code is full of vulns. So I'm not, it's like people are like, every time a Waymo has an accident, it's a fucking headline. Meanwhile, how many people died this morning by human drivers, right? I don't think a Waymo accident has resulted in a single human death. I think if it did, the outcry would be enormous. But it's like, that's like, oh, AI coded app has a vuln. It's like, well, fucking humans do nothing but pump out vulns all day. Why are we writing a headline about the AI coded vulns, right? This is where I'm at with like Waymos too. AOL punter, you're a youngin'. I think Jay Harris might be watching on a time delay. I was talking to AOL punter a while ago. CompuServe. I never, yeah, I know what CompuServe is, but yes, that is before my time. Yeah, no security vulnerabilities before AI, right? Nightcry, you just quoted one of my favorite things that someone said while I was on stage giving a talk. I was giving a talk at Black Hat about security in the CI/CD pipeline. Basically, it was long enough ago that like DevOps was still like the hot topic. And a bunch of people from Etsy that were homies of mine were sitting in the front row. And Etsy was like famous for being one of these early dev shops that everyone that got hired at Etsy, like in developer, they pushed code to prod on their first day. They made it so that, hey, pushing to prod is not this like mythical thing that happens every once in a while, and you can't be scared to take it down. And it was all this whole DevOps revolution, right? So everyone that got hired on your first day, you pushed code to prod, right? They sat in the front. We were the whole talk was about security and DevOps, and some guy raised his hand and like at some point in the talk and was like, "What are you all talking about? We need change control meetings. You can't push code to prod before it goes through change control." Because that was the old way of doing things, right? You kind of had to have this massive sign off before you you would make this big change to prod, because you would stack all these changes. And like DevOps was like, no, just fucking go change that line of code and prod. It's cool, right? And they had all of this like CI/CD stuff to make sure that it wouldn't break anything. And then when it did break, they were very fast to recover. And that's the future as we live in it now. Like DevOps won, right? But this guy raised his hand and was like, nah, we need change control, guys. What are you guys doing? And one of the Etsy security engineers raised their hand and said exactly what you just said, Nightcry. It just said, because vulnerabilities have not existed before DevOps, right? Like we've never pushed a security vulnerability when it went through change control. So it's the same argument, right? We just continue to speed up. And I think if we look at DevOps winning as any evidence, any resistance to these AI coding agents being the way of the future is, I mean, good luck, right? You sound like the guy that stood and was like, but change control. That's like sitting in the room now and saying, but all of your code needs to be written and reviewed by a human. It's just not, you're not going to win. You're not going to win that fight. Push, prod, change control, PRD and dev, yeah. All right, so Codex, let's see how this works. Scan a code base, you give it a repo, it starts a scan. It's going to build its own context around that repo, and then it's going to find stuff. And I don't know for sure, because I haven't used Codex. If they are anywhere near Opus 4.6 capabilities, they are surpassing any current known tool or strategy in finding vulns in code and fixing. Look, there you go. Create the PR, it auto fixes the fucking vuln too. It's just the way of the future, everybody. Build system context, create editable threat model. That's awesome. Prioritize, validate issues, and patch with full system context. Codex will also learn from your feedback over time to improve the quality of its findings. If you knock the criticality of a finding or use that feedback to refine the threat model, improve precision in subsequent runs. Agents fixing agents, totally. I mean, it's just the way. You know, I don't know if we're all going to hate this, right? Holy shit, Netgear is vibe coding. Netgear, another vulnerability factory. Codex security integrated effortlessly into our robust security development environment. I mean, Netgear, you've been a vuln factory for a while. Its findings were impressively clear and comprehensive, often giving the sense that an experienced product security researcher was working alongside us. I mean, hey. It just is the future. I'm going to include this one in my newsletter and stuff. So again, here you guys go. If you want to read more about this malware stuff, I am malware reversing out. My brain cells left to do this have left the building, but Huntress is kind of legendary at this stuff. All right, that was our speed round. I think that's all the articles I had today, everybody. Let me dump all of this. I didn't record a video while I was live. I don't know if I'm in trouble. Let me dump all these threads. I didn't record a video today. I've got a few videos coming out that are with my editor right now. AI memory poisoning, Gemini API key nightmare still hasn't come out. Extension purchasing malware still hasn't come out. AI agent browser nightmares. I've got a few other YouTube videos that have been kind of slow to come out. You keep hearing pretty darn good praise from Huntress users. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know much about. I honestly don't know much about their product. To be transparent, I've never been a customer, but they have a lot of really high quality talent over there. So, and the legend John Hammond is one of them, of course. You guys want to react to some videos? This is what I do when I run out of steam. We just start reacting. You want to do that? Yeah. So his Wi-Fi one that we watched live is one of his most watched videos ever. He hit a banger. So this is a Cisco vuln from February that he said is one of the most sophisticated hacks he's ever seen. Isn't Huntress the one that spied on that threat actor? Yeah, they catch heat for all the stuff they can see on their device. It's like, what do you think EDR is? But like corporate sanctioned spyware. Like, of course they can see all of his search results and stuff. This is a pretty short little threat analysis that Low Level is saying is the most advanced hack he's ever seen. All right, let's see.
Maybe they were hacking the whole network. They were talking about SD.
Whoa, he talks too fast to speed him up that much. We could do 1 1/4.
WAN vulnerabilities in SD-WAN, a firmware downgrade attack that was used to hack a CVE from 2022, and how a threat actor used this to get into every branch of a particular company. It's pretty crazy. Guys, the story here is from Cisco Talos, and it has to do with UAT 8616. If you don't know what that is also another word for Salt Typhoon,
hey, thanks,
which I think Microsoft also has a separate name for. In either case, it is Salt Typhoon, a Chinese threat actor that has been caught using 0 days in the wild to hack into companies all over the world, all over the US, particularly water companies, power companies, more of like your OT
and
operations.
telecom company. We just talked about this, right? We literally just talked about this group. So here we go. We're going to get some insight into their techniques that they use focused on hacking Cisco routers. So, all right. So we were talking about this, and now we're going to go into Low Levels, talk about this. This is a good 1-2 combo.
Start this story, you have to go into kind of what SD-WAN is and what it's for. Now, for a long time, right, there's this problem when it comes to the management of IT networks, where if you are a company with various different branches and different locations, you have to connect them all together. Now, for a long time, there were really, really old solutions like just private T1, T0 lease lines, and then eventually we upgraded to MPLS, right, multi-protocol label switching, that allowed branch A and branch B to talk over some kind of private network, and it would switch based off what protocol was being talked about. Also, by the way, I'm not like an IT network admin, so I'm going to very highly oversimplify this if that bothers you. Sorry. As a solution to MPLS, which depended on private networks because it was not encrypted by default, we upgraded this thing called SD-WAN. SD-WAN is software-defined wide area networks, and it allows companies to have branch A and branch B talk over any transport protocol and define based on the protocol how and where it routes to. It's a very kind of flexible way of having branch A and branch B talk. Now, the vulnerability in question today is bad gateway. The vulnerability today in question is a vulnerability in the way that a SD-WAN controller peers to other networks. Now, what does peering mean? Consider, for example, you are running one of these networks networks, right? And you have a new branch that wants to come online. Well, that new branch has to authenticate to the larger network that it is allowed to be there, right? How do you do that? You have either some kind of private key, public key exchange to sign a packet to say, hi, I am part of the company.
Mike
I signed
Jones,
into the company's
thank
private
you.
key. Or maybe you have a symmetric key that both you and the company have pre-shared and use that to send some kind of symmetric exchange.
Welcome.
You can use all of these cryptographic mechanisms to prove that, yes, you are a member of the team. But what happens if there is a vulnerability in the way that this peering system works? Now, the details of how this is broken are not known publicly. There is no POC for this yet, but Cisco Talos observed UAT 8616 exploiting a vulnerability in the SD-WAN peering system, which allowed them to create effectively a fake branch of a company network and just appear on this map as another node in the system. Now, what does that mean?
Whoa.
That means that they're able to advertise IP addresses, routes, are able to emit data into the network. They are able to join the management control plane at a lower privilege level. We'll go into why that matters here in a second. And ultimately just join the network. They did this by exploiting the public-facing port on these management systems and taking advantage of a vulnerability in how the peering works. Now, what's interesting here is that they land in the network. They can do things, but they're not necessarily privileged yet.
Nightcry, you have 300 sites on SD-WAN. Have you checked this out? The Cisco thing out?
Not necessarily root. They can interact with the network. They can exploit other vulnerabilities, but they aren't really done yet. What's
You ditched
really
Cisco.
interesting
Got it.
here is they did what is commonly referred to as a firmware downgrade attack, right? So code, as it gets older, in theory, gets more secure, right? We find vulnerabilities in software. We use the findings of vulnerabilities to kind of crumb up with tradecraft to make the software more and more secure. That implies that software from the past has more vulnerabilities. This is true because we have a vulnerability 2022-20755, which is a vulnerability in the CLI of the Cisco SD-WAN software that is only accessible by an authenticated local user, and it allows them to escalate to root. Now remember, the threat actor in this case has created a fake branch, and they now can touch the management plane of this network with a low-auth user, and so they then exploit this vulnerability after downgrading. This is why people typically complain, like, why don't routers let me go to an older version of the firmware? Well, because literally if someone lands on your router and they want to do like escalation stuff, it is typically used as for threat actors to downgrade your software to give them access to the old suite of all the old way of the vulnerability. And guys, real quick, while we can't stop bugs like this from happening, one thing we can do is stay back to the video. So this takes advantage of what is known as a path traversal. And yes, if you are in the world of VR, you will notice that we are still experiencing path traversals and SQL injections and command injections in the Lord's year 2026. But that is just the nature of the game right now, ladies and gentlemen. That's where we're at. So what is a path traversal? Let me show you. Remind me later. So consider, for example, that we have a tool or utility, maybe consider Nginx, and all we're doing is taking a user-supplied path and we are serving a file based on that path, right? Very easy. So we're gonna read the file LOL. My computer froze. Okay, well that file doesn't exist, and that's fine. I didn't make that file. I'm not going to open that file. I don't care about that file. Now, what if we're not going to sanitize the path of the file that is shown, and I'm going to walk back up the directory tree because, oh, by the way, the root of this file is var www uploads. We're going to walk up the path here, and we're going to open etc password, which is generally considered a sensitive file on a computer. And bada bing, bada boom, there is etc password. Now I want to highlight etc password is not that scary. It just highlights username, user ID, group ID, and then your shell and your root directory. But that being said, if you can access this when you shouldn't, probably not a great place to be, right? So the vulnerability that they then downgraded to and exploited to get to root is a vulnerability in the way that the vShell CLI works. So something, when you log into the system, you are given a config file, and the way the config file is generated is it uses this path here, and then it uses your username. Well, what if we made our username ...
Really? In the username? This is like ancient vulnerability techniques. Oh my gosh.
/temp foo external, which they were able to do and prove they could read arbitrary files off the system, off the vCenter system that is unauthenticated, or it's authenticated right now, but with a low privilege user. What they were able to do is read the confd IPC secret, IPC being inter-process communication, and they could use this to sign IPC requests that then said, oh, by the way, can we do this as UID 0, GID 0, which is root, right? So you'll see here, this is a script the finders of this vulnerability wrote up. They said, hey, can we run python temp exploit.py 123, right? And we're gonna use this to leak out the conf IPC secret, and then we're going to use that to run vShell as root, right? Very, really crazy stuff. So the summary here, right? SD-WAN vulnerability, authenticate in, join as a branch into the data center, and then downgrade the vCenters that you're able to now touch to a vulnerable version to then upgrade or to escalate your privileges to root, right? The fact that you can downgrade without being root, I'm not really sure like how that works, but absolutely insane vulnerability. So guys, if you are in the situation where maybe you manage one of these networks, all you got to do is upgrade your firmware. Also, if you're looking in your logs, right, you may want to look for patterns like this. This is all from Cisco Talos, by the way. You know, if you see a control connection state where there's a new peer trying to join, and that peer comes from an IP address that's public that you really don't recognize, it's probably no way know that they are there. Maybe you go and deal with that. And then also, if you're looking for like evidence of privilege escalation, you want to look for attempts to authenticate with crafted usernames that contain traversal strings.
Yeah, come on, duh.
Because that is how they get into the user ID 0 on the system. And then obviously you're checking for all the known compromised stuff like weird known hosts, you're looking for weird keys, you're looking for weird SSHD configs, all that traditional stuff. Now, the question I know you are all waiting for me to answer, would Rust have fixed this? Would Rust have made this a little bit better? No, I don't know, maybe. The problem is
not
no
a
one
memory
knows
safety thing.
why this vulnerability exists. No one knows the nature of the SD-WAN compromise. So like if it is a either cryptographic misimplementation where they either have a hard-coded private key or like they like didn't sign something properly, it was like a hash extension attack, Rust would not have solved that, right? Or there's like a logic error in the state machine for the system, Rust would not have fixed that, right? That is an implementation error. Now, if this is a vulnerability in the way that the parsing and the execution of the peering system goes, then you are able to use memory corruption to potentially trick the state machine into thinking that it's already authenticated. Maybe we have a solution that Rust could solve, right? Maybe Rust could do this. The problem is, typically in these larger kind of carrier-grade routers, they are written in real-time systems. They don't use kind of like your user land kernel modes segmentation. They all kind of run at the same level.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That one's that one's kind of crazy that still existed in the year 2026 in the username thing. What is this one? This is Brickstorm. Ooh, I want to see his Brickstorm take. I've talked a lot about Brickstorm. I covered this. Let's see what Low Level has to say about it.
Cardinal sins is using hard-coded credentials inside of your software. In today's video, we're talking about a piece of software that did, unfortunately, just that. Now, normally when I make these videos, I try not to harp too hard on like specific CVEs unless they're being actively exploited or like they're a big trending news story. And in this example, literally Chinese threat actor Silk Typhoon is using the CVE from Dell Recover Point virtual machines to move laterally inside of networks of large IT providers. So what's going on here, guys? Well, we have this little piece of software that's called Dell Recover Point, which basically is like your
if you guys don't know about, so really quick, Brickstorm, right? Brickstorm is the like very, very stealthy malware out of China that's been very prevalent on appliance software. So things like security appliances, edge devices, things that are stuck on your network that you cannot edit, so you cannot install your security or monitoring software on. So like, they can behave poorly on it in a quiet way and likely not get caught. Brickstorm, we're seeing like dwell times, meaning how long the malware has been on that device, of over a year. It's getting really bad. I don't think we've even heard publicly how bad Brickstorm has been, because I think a lot of people just aren't talking about it a lot yet, because it's not like a breach where customer data is being stolen. So where people have to disclose a lot of this stuff, it's very nation state. And I have a feeling that Brickstorm is much worse than we are hearing, and we're already hearing that it's pretty bad.
Your way to administer VM clusters, right? It's very traditional like VMware plugins for the vCenter ecosystem, and you could use that to manage your VMs, okay? Well, the problem is with any administrative software that lives in a network, if there's a way to escalate your privileges to a higher level, people who are in that network can use that to do malicious stuff. And this is especially true for places like virtual machine networks, where the assumption from a design perspective that the virtual machines are lower privilege. But if you accidentally give away the network with a vulnerability in a virtual machine management tool, you're gonna have a bad time. So let's go over what's going on here. We have Google Threat Intelligence discovered that actor Unk, I guess 6201, which is another way for them to say Silk Typhoon, which is a Chinese threat actor, has been moving around laterally in networks that they track using this CVE here, CVE 2026-22769. What this literally is, it is a vulnerability in quotes, in the Dell management recover point software, where basically there is a hard-coded admin password inside of this file here that people in the network can use to deploy a malicious WAR file, which I guess is like a web page update file, to the server, and then it just runs their code as root. And they use that to deploy a backdoor called Grimbolt, which is a UPX-packed C# backdoor that allows them to run code in Tomcat, which is an Apache runtime for Java code. So we're talking about vulnerabilities that are basically from the 2008 era, right? Hard-coded credentials. I want to talk a little bit about like the world of cryptography, and if you're a security engineer, this will bode well for you, right? There are two schemes for cryptography that are good, right? There is symmetric cryptography and there is asymmetric cryptography, okay? Symmetric cryptography The problem is, out of the passwords, I'm going to test password, and we're going to see, oh, come on, man, that's the wrong password. Well, we have access to the Dell binary because we have bought the product, we've downloaded the product. So what I'm going to do is literally just run strings on the binary, pump it into less, and we'll see pretty quickly, super secret password here. I'm guessing that's going to be the password. So
good call on the time check. I actually have something to share with you guys. We'll finish that video. But I'm gonna hop off in a few minutes. But what? I've never seen that before. I just got a really weird LinkedIn error. I got flown out to Palo Alto Networks to talk quantum security about a bunch of stuff. And the live stream is starting in a few minutes over on LinkedIn. So I'm going to put this in chat. You guys feel free to hop over on LinkedIn and watch that live stream, all about quantum security if you're into that kind of thing. It was a lot of fun to go out there and talk to their quantum experts with a few other people. So yeah, go over and join that. And I won't compete with my own views over there. So I'll probably hop off at that point. Let's finish the low level video, and then you guys can go do that. Other than that, if you're new here, I stream Tuesday, Thursdays mornings. I'll probably do Wednesday this week too. And then I have my newsletter that you guys can subscribe to kind of stay up to date on all this stuff. So I'll get my little spiel in now because we'll finish this low level video, and then you guys can go watch that quantum thing if you want.
We're going to run Dell with that password, and we are entering super secret mode.
Thanks,
is an example, by the
Kilobyte.
way. This is not the real Dell deployment. It's an example. Because the deployment that I have locally of Dell is the same as somebody else has somewhere else, this password works. Again, symmetric encryption, symmetric cryptography is not a bad thing if the symmetry is different between deployments. If you and you and you and you all have different symmetric key deployments, it's fine, assuming the symmetric key does not go to any other actors. But because they use the same key everywhere, people in vCenter region A can hack into vCenter region B, and that's exactly what the Chinese threat actor did. No bueno. Now, people may be saying, oh my God, this is a backdoor by Dell. Okay, the word backdoor has a lot of different meanings. It literally is
Mohammed,
a backdoor by Dell.
I think
it's
so.
not
I think Palo is just
What's
doing
happening here is they
LinkedIn.
probably left in an admin user for people to be able to log into the server, be able to manage the deployment. The problem is, because they left an admin user in one deployment where the keys are all the same, now that key can be used anywhere by anybody. So two solutions here. Either they roll a new symmetric key on every deployment. The problem there is the key is written in plain text, so it compromises the server in one location, compromises that key. Or they use PKI, right? Private key infrastructure, which is literally what you do for like SSH, for example, right? You have some kind of public key that you put in the SSH server, and then you use the private RSA key to authenticate the key exchange, and then you use that to ensure that you are who you say you are, right? So either through some amount of symmetric rolling or asymmetric PKI is a way to make this better. That being said, the current state of it is not very good. It is kind of cool though with these intrusions to see like the methodologies of the threat actors kind of play out, right? So Silk's Typhoon is this one actor that's very well known for hitting VPN concentrators, right? So if you think of any corporate network, right?
This video is awesome because I covered this topic, but I really focused on the initial access and like the Brickstorm stuff. I didn't really talk a whole lot about this. This is like low level, and I have two very different skill sets. As his name implies, he's much lower level than a lot of people, right? On reverse engineering and stuff. So it's super, super interesting to like really dive into okay, they got in, right? Which is what he's about to talk about. And then it's like, what happened once they got in? Oh, well, they actually did something pretty gnarly to move way more laterally than they would have normally been able to.
What you're seeing here is primary site A, secondary site B. Ultimately, there has to be some connection for data in site A to traverse and talk to secondary site B. What that a lot of the times is a VPN concentrator at the edge of this network. Literally, you have a VPN tunnel, but traffic has to hit A to go to B or B to go to A. And so ultimately, there is code exposed at these exits, right? And Silk Typhoon is notorious for finding vulnerabilities in applications like Avanti Pulse Connect VPN, Palo Alto Firewalls, or Citrix NetScaler that allows them to get into these networks. And then they take vulnerabilities in software like RecoverPoint or otherwise for these kind of like larger VM management software and use them to covertly
that's gnarly
for a long time. But what's interesting is you kind of get a peek at exactly how they do it. So they have these backdoors that are obfuscated, written in C#, But also the way they kind of hide their network traffic, right? They're aware that certain NICs inside of the VMware deployment are being watched very closely. So they'll create kind of like these sub NICs or like these special secret NICs that like the logging software can't see, and then install on those NICs IP tables rules so that certain packets in a certain format with certain rules are able to quietly get in, but the rest get denied so the network monitoring software can't see it. So if you're watching this video and you are
this is like such a good look at some seriously, like we overuse the word sophisticated, right? Like drinking game on the channel. If we see sophisticated, this is sophisticated, right? This is like nation state level stealth as an important part of it, right? With Brickstorm and everything that they're talking about. Like when stealth is important, that's fucking sophisticated. This isn't just like random obfuscation. This isn't just like trying to clean up their tracks. This is like very, very next level. Like run, like from the types of devices they're targeting, their stealth is important.
person that uses Dell Recover Point, I want to highlight that Google's threat intelligence team did put out some signatures for ways that you can find these actors, right? So basically, if you see a Linux ELF with these strings inside of it, or you see files that match these patterns, right? So it's like, you know, either an ELF or otherwise that have these strings inside of it, or you see these strings inside of another file, right? You can use these to detect where those backdoors live.
Yeah, low
and then
level's the
ultimately
goat.
update your Dell Recover Point, because if you haven't, it might be vulnerable to the CVE. So really interesting stuff, guys. Kind of a world view into, you know, the world of malicious actors, kind of how they get in, how they hack, and how they ultimately hide. And would Rust have fixed this? Would Rust have, no. This is all.
Is that how he signs off all his videos now? Would Rust have fixed this? Yeah. Low level's the GOAT. Go subscribe. Good call on ending with the React stream. That's kind of how we end up every day. After I just yap for so long, the batteries run low. It's like, okay, time to react for a little while. Going to get lunch with a friend here in town this week. She's new to town and she's a recruiter. I'm going to bring her to get some pho. Let's get some W's in chat for a nice bowl of pho. So yeah, we're going to go grab some lunch. Give her your number. Yo, dude. Yeah. Let me know. Let me know what you need. I'm down to help you guys get some jobs. I love when I have Twitter open and I see people like subscribe here, and then I notice that they also followed me on Twitter. It's like, you're clicking all of my links. Cool. All right. Well, if you guys are into the quantum stuff, I kind of gave you guys a bit of a sneak preview last week about what we were talking about in quantum. That event is like we were there for, we filmed for a whole day. I don't know how they're going to cut down to a reasonable live stream. But yeah, go check that out on LinkedIn. And you know, just talk about, just in chat there, talk about how awesome I am specifically, so that Palo Alto keeps supporting me. They've been awesome to work with. They have like tons of really smart people over there. Unit 42 specifically is just stacked. One of the three people that were on the couch that we're talking to was one of the heads of Unit 42. The other two were more quantum specific, but it was cool. Let me know how I haven't seen the final cut. I was just in the room, obviously, so I haven't seen the final cut. So we'll talk about it Thursday. We can, or I'll probably go live tomorrow. Let me check my calendar. Maybe I'll do a bit of a short stream tomorrow. All right, guys, cool. I'm gonna sign off, so I'm not competing against that. I'm sure Palo Alto would love that. Hey, you're live streaming during the live stream that we made with you. So it's been real. I'm gonna go watch that for a little while and then go grab some lunch. And I'll either be live tomorrow morning or definitely Thursday if you don't catch me tomorrow. So turn notifications on to see if you catch me in the morning. All right.